Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Deckin Around. My name is Tyler.
My name is Steve.
And today we are really excited to have Alex Chin on the show. For anyone who doesn't know, Alex Chin is the creative mind behind Seasons Playing Cards and also the creative mind behind Portfolio 52, which if anyone doesn't know this and they're a playing card collector, they should go check out.
Shame on them.
It's an amazing online database basically of playing cards and a system where you can basically create your own catalog of the decks that you own. So it's absolutely an amazing product. Well, not even product, website, I guess you could call it. But I think Alex has really contributed so much to the playing card community, especially since he has helped lobby to make National Playing Card Collector Day a holiday, basically a recognized holiday, which I think is awesome. So we are really excited to have him on the show today.
Yes, we are. We've been waiting a while for this. We've talked about it from the very beginning, and he was kind of in the thick of NPCCD decks being created, and now he's back in the thick of things. So it's cool to finally have him on the show.
Without a doubt, and I think it's I feel like that's always our thing. And again, this is a testament to Steve's amazing booking capabilities. But I feel like we're always booked like 4 months out. Yeah, I'll get like a message being like, "You'll never guess who we have on." I'm like, "Who?" He's like, "Alex Chin." I'm like, "When?" He's like, 6 months from now. I'm like, "All right then." So we are really excited though to have Alex on tonight. And before we jump into it, guys, just a reminder to make sure to like the video and please subscribe to the channel. We always appreciate your support, and every sub helps us get more eyes on our videos. So make sure to hit those buttons. Also,
and please ring the bell.
I can't interrupt Steve's ring the bell there. My bad. But also, before we jump into it, guys, a quick word from our sponsor here.
Hummingbird Feathers mimics the shimmer of a hummingbird in motion. Meticulously created with a specialized printing process using multiple holographic foils. Stunning tuck design and sculpted embossing with master letterpress creation. Featuring limited, standard, and gilded 3-deck sets. Pre-order yours today at marvelousdecks.com. Marvelousdecks.com. I can't wait for that deck.
It's going to be an amazing deck. I think just the sheer amount of foil and detail that went into that back design, I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be fun. So yeah, the closest you'll ever get to seeing a real hummingbird up close, probably. So
I mean, I've had a hummingbird like this close to me. Not in my hand, obviously. I wish it was in my hand, but
not everyone has gotten that close. But definitely a beautiful deck either way.
Yeah.
But everyone, without further ado, here is Alex Chin.
Alex,
what's up, man? How's it going, guys?
How you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm prepping for the holidays. I have elastic pants, preparing for the turkeys.
There you go.
Nice. I feel like everybody these days are wearing elastic pants every day. So
yeah, I was about to say my holiday sweatpants are now just my everyday sweatpants.
Yeah, so I used to have that, and then I think there's like this little like dip in where it's like, all right, everyone's wearing the sweatpants, and it's like you have too much sweatpants in your life that like you have to appreciate it more. So I have like Business Friday, I wear jeans. And then I go, so I have to appreciate it,
Nice,
right.
Nice.
But,
I actually have been wearing so much. So I have this thing that I refuse to wear sweatpants outside, just because I don't want to look like a dirtbag and a bum, right? So I got a couple pairs of joggers, in the past that kind of look like sweatpants. Like after I got them, they weren't very, appealing, I guess you could say, after I got them. So I picked up another pair of joggers the other day. So hopefully when I get them, they look like something that I can wear out and be a little bit more comfortable,
Oh, are you buying them online? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. Buying clothes online is always a tricky little thing. My fiance has bought a few things online. I think, especially for women's clothing, it's a very big switch of like you show this model and this, and then all of a sudden it's literally like a garbage bag. She's like, "What the fuck?"
Yes.
But it's always a little gamble. I'm sure those sweatpants will look good on you.
Well, they're joggers. They're not sweatpants, Alex.
I feel like joggers are
what's
the difference? One of them has
the difference between joggers and sweatpants is like kind of baggy. Joggers are a little bit more like fitted a little better. They have kind of
like a tracksuit.
No.
So joggers are still made out of sweatpant material. There is subclass of
somewhat.
They're a subclass of sweatpants, and they basically have a more form-fitting shape to them, and a lot of them have cuffs around the bottom. That's the only difference. Steve is trying to justify wearing joggers outside and not wanting them to be sweatpants.
They don't look like sweatpants though. They're joggers are definitely not sweatpants.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it though.
Lingerie for men, Pip Chick said.
Yeah, I think many people have changed their wardrobe this year, and I think it's funny because trying to figure out what to buy people for the holidays. Usually, clothes are a go-to for many people, but when are you going to be wearing all of these clothes that you would normally buy? So it's like I feel like a lot of people are getting leggings and t-shirts this year.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that you don't think would carry over. My fiance has a lot of yoga clothes that she just wears all the time now because she's like, yeah, this is more comfortable than wearing bras. This is more comfortable, and then robes. Like she does not have your wariness of going outside. She'll just full robe, just taking out the trash. It's no big deal. It's it's 2020. Who cares?
I mean, I can take out the trash in my sweatpants. And actually, I could go to the store in my sweatpants as long as they're my jogger sweatpants and not my sweatpants.
Your dress sweatpants.
Yeah, they have to be
That's how it's categorized in my mind now. Dress sweatpants are joggers.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So how have things otherwise been for you, Alex? How has quarantine and this whole pandemic kind of impacted you so far?
It's okay. It's a little tough living in the city. Obviously, I think, especially when it first started out, you can really tell who lived in the city and who wasn't based on how chill they were about it. Everyone's it's not a big deal. And it's they also have 5 acres of land to stroll around in because they live in the middle of nowhere. And then in the city, especially with Chicago actually now has a resurgence with the cold weather and all that.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tougher. We're actually going to move out of this apartment. We actually bought a place. So I'm crossing fingers if it'll close. And that'll actually have a yard, a bit more breathing room, and feel a little bit better about it. But we're taking precautions, a little bit of wake up early, go to the grocery store first thing so you don't deal with all the other people. But other than that, I've been prepared. I think a lot of people that have worked from home is not as big a change. I know I saw Kevin Rylick, he's from Penguin. Yeah, and he's yeah, dude, I've been doing this for 4 years. It's fine. The difference in seeing how people that weren't used to working from home and seeing oh, I went through that. You're not used to enough light. You need better lighting in your place. Oh, you haven't figured out how to set boundaries for yourself in the daytime, and so your work is dragging into the night, and all these little things that eventually people are starting to get on the page. But yeah. I don't know. It's a transition. It's a little harder, but it wasn't as bad as some other people.
Yeah, for sure. The question I have is, congratulations on your new pad, by the way. And are you going to have that awesome background and setup in your new place that you have now? I mean, the beautiful wall and everything. That just looks dope. This background makes me feel a lot fancier than I am.
No, it's our new place is actually pretty standard. It's just a house, but it has a side yard. It's a double lot.
Nice.
And double lot isn't double the price or anything. It's just it's a little bit more rare to get as a single family home because a lot of developers, obviously they want that land to build giant apartments. And so being able to find something like that, again, doing it for the dog, it was pretty exciting. One of my side things I've decided as of this year, I saw this one speech pathologist raise a dog and teach it how to talk through buttons. So I think I'm nearly positive I'm gonna go all in on that and have a talking dog by the end of 2022. I'm pretty sure that's
a lot of work, man.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty intense, but if you can pull it off, that's impressive. That's an impressive feat for sure.
I mean, I'm sure he could. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm a big dog person though, and a little structure in my life doesn't hurt.
Yeah. And that's what they like. They like that structure too. So
yeah.
Dude, that like gives me. I can only imagine how much time and effort that would take, though. Like, I feel like that's a third full-time job there between
Yeah.
everything.
So it's like, I think owning the dog is the hard part. Teaching it to talk isn't as bad. I think teaching it to talk, because it's operant conditioning.
Yeah.
It's like small things every day. So it's like watering a plant.
Okay.
Which is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, actually, like, you guys can't see it. That green tree over there, that's the only green part of that palm tree. Everything else is brown. Everything else matches the wood tones in the back.
There you go.
Nice. I mean, you got to bring in some greens, some browns into your plants, you know? Yeah. I mean, we have like 25 plants in my house and on the back porch, and it's like a job, man.
Well, with 25 plants.
Yeah, I've got one plant. Which I forgot to water so far this week, which reminds me, I need to water that.
That's funny.
Oh, man. So I know one of the big things that's gone on for you recently is obviously you had your most recent NPCCD deck release. Mm-hmm. And I know that was somewhat of a tumultuous process for you, more so than usual this year.
Yeah.
How do you want to kind of, I know you talked about it a little bit with the announcement of the deck at the 52 Plus Joker convention, but you want to touch briefly on that and how you kind of recovered from that whole setback?
Yeah. So the beauty, and this is a double-edged sword of what National Playing Card Collection Day is, which is a timestamp of when you got to deliver something. And so initially it was like a sort of like forays, like you're starting to like grow a little. And I think too many people are like crippled by Kickstarter. Like, Kickstarter is a great platform and definitely use it when you need to, but to be completely dependent on that was a little like iffy. Like, what happens if it goes down? They had the whole union thing that happened. Like, if that disappears, like, are you safe? So this was sort of a way for me to sort of practice front loading, using my own money, just putting it in, making it produced and delivering the product. Like, when you buy it, you just ship it out. And that was like the whole difference in the model. And that sort of worked for the past few years. This specific year, there was a little bit of trouble, essentially during COVID. And I swear Chicago is a safe place. But when I tell you this story, you're gonna be horrified. But basically, I
feel like that's the complete opposite of what I've heard of Chicago. I'm just gonna throw that out there too. Like, maybe it's just television and things like that, but I've heard some pretty not so nice things.
Chicago's one of those places where it's like when you're hearing Europeans talk about America, you're like, oh yeah, like guns and flags and trucks. I'm like, oh, you mean Texas? Like, that's not. So I think obviously Chicago has some very definitive borders of sure. all the yuppies are here. There's the Viagra Triangle with all the old men trying to pick up the young women. There's the families over here, and then obviously there's gang violence in like the Garfield Park area. But from where I'm at, it's a nice neighborhood, but it was just I was actually just meeting my cousin, and I come back and I see my car window was busted through, and I'm like, oh shit! And I was only gone for like 4 hours, and it's like the open area of all the traffic. But basically what happened is I look in the back seat and my laptop was stolen. Funny thing is, my fiance, her laptop and her bag were in the front, but I think because it was just tucked away a little bit more, they just didn't see it. And I mean, it was lucky because that was a work laptop for her. But for me, it was just like, oh no. Because at that same time, my phone also broke. And it was just like a really bad trifecta of like not having your phone, not having your laptop, and then my car also like had a broken window. So it's like this really tough scenario of like, how do I get this laptop done? How do I get this phone set up? And you have all these confirmation codes. It's like, all right, we're verifying, like you're logging through all your stuff again. And you're like, verify that you're you, Steve, or you're you, Tyler. And then, well, if you don't have a phone, it doesn't work. And so there's a lot of extra authentication that I had to go through.
That doesn't sound fun.
it was tough, but anyways, what ended up happening is the laptop had a lot of my stuff, including the artwork files for Portfolio 52's new layout, as well as National Playing Card Collection Days 2020 deck. And it's not like I really lost the theme. I could do it. It's just it was sort of tedious. I mean, you'll see it next year. It's actually pretty fun. It's just like to rush that job could be a bit wonky. So I just like sort of leaned in and decided to do a new thing, which I think ended up looking pretty good especially for the theme of 2020 this year.
Yeah, I think it came out great. That sucks. It's crazy. It's like anybody who knows anything about San Francisco, you can't leave anything in your car. Like if you leave anything in your car where anybody can see it, no matter where you go, your car is going to get broken into.
That's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't even matter. You can be gone for 12 minutes. You can be gone for 12 hours. Your car, if you leave a backpack in the back of your car where anybody can see it, your car will get broken into. Guaranteed.
See, like that's not what I envision of San Francisco at all.
Yeah,
like, dude, it's terrible. People are out scoping cars like left and right, and it's crazy because my mentality now is, if I'm okay with it getting stolen, then I can leave it in the car. That's basically what it comes down to.
This explains so much more about our San Diego trip now.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. I carried my camera bag wherever I went.
I was like, Steve, just leave your stuff in the trunk. He's like, no, not a chance. And I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, I'll throw all my stuff in the trunk. I don't care.
Let me just leave my $20,000 worth of equipment in the trunk.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy to think. I wonder how much of that too is like, I don't know. This is my overactive imagination here. I envision like, oh, San Francisco, big tech center. It's corporate espionage. It's not just like car thieves.
Yeah. I mean, with the money,
they won't steal your car. They'll just literally break your window, take your bag, and then you might have clothes, whatever. But they're just so good at seeing bags and laptops and stuff, and they're gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think crime is really, especially in the city, it's just opportunity and convenience. Like if you don't make it convenient, usually you just will never encounter it. But that's
it's unfortunate. It sucks. I mean, obviously you have a new computer because you're talking to us on it.
Yeah.
And like you said, while it's a setback, it wasn't something that completely derailed the process. You still managed to make it in time. You managed to make
sell out
and make an amazing deck that I think really had people talking. And I think that's one of the really cool things about the NPCCD decks is you always seem to strive for a way to step outside the mold of what playing cards are doing at that point in time. Like
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, I have high expectations for like the things I like to do, and if there isn't anything there, I'm the one that ends up having to do it. So whether it's color changing ink or other print techniques, I think at the end of the day, it's just there's something that I'm looking for, and if it's not there, if I'm not, or if no one else has done it, it's just on me to make it happen. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's great. The cool thing about it is it's like every year we know in October Alex is releasing decks.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it is that you're not like a lot of other people in the industry flooding the market with your decks. And like you take your time, and when you release a deck, it's worth the wait. And it may be 6 decks, which some people may put out every other month or something like that. But it's kind of like a collection, kind of like a really expensive clothing line that takes a lot of time, like a whole season, to put together a collection. And then they have these pieces that are part of the collection. And I'm just really psyched that there are very few of designers, creators that do that in this industry. And, you do a really great job at doing that and keeping people wanting more and more of your work, and it's cool that every October we know we're going to get some Alex Chin stuff,
Well, thank you. Yeah, and like I get very mixed reviews on the 6-deck offering a lot, and it's just like, just think of it like a Kickstarter, man. It's just like you have your different tiers, and the whole. This was a weird offering that sort of happened based on the very first, or not first, but the second launch, where essentially it's just you have one deck, then you have 2 decks, but and they have significant difference, like one's gilded, one's not. But then you don't have to worry about which one you're giving, because then it makes matching easier, so you can better control inventory. Because if you go very specific, then there will be SKUs that just like outperform or underperform that you just don't predict. And so that flexibility in the offering, I think actually the Gold Nox that just came out, they're doing a very similar version.
No, it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
Yeah, no, so I mean, it's like, it's an offering that like, it works, but I think when I see it as like, oh, you only want 1 deck, you only want 3 decks, that's set up for that. Like no one's asking you to buy all 6, but I'll be happy if you do. But yeah, I think the idea of variation in this game is a very interesting one that's being explored. Some people embrace it well, some people abuse it a little bit, and it's just sort of is the nature of the beast. But yeah, it's interesting to see the hype and how people play with that.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. And obviously, I am definitely taking full responsibility here. Everybody complains about something, right? And I've complained about stuff. Obviously, I don't complain. I'm perfect, but there's a lot of complaining on all types of things in this community, right? In the industry. And it all kind of goes back to the same thing, right? I might say, oh, this deck is too expensive, but this deck is perfectly fine, even though it's more money, but it's like, I guess what it comes down to is if we like a deck, we'll buy it, right? And if we don't like a deck, we'll complain about it. That's what it comes down to.
It's a very binary Reddit way of looking at life. Up vote, down vote, nothing in between.
Dude, oh my God, let's not even get into Reddit, man.
Steve and I have a hate-hate relationship with Reddit now.
Oh my God. I don't have a hate-hate relationship with Reddit. I have a hate-hate relationship with the moderators of Reddit. That's
fair. That's fair.
Oh God. I feel like they're like literally sitting at their desks like this, being like just staring at their computer, waiting for the next post to come in and be like, not allowed.
Are they not friendly with the content you're posting? Is that what's up, or
they're just very authoritarian? Let's say they're just they take their job seriously.
I don't have too many run-ins with the mods, to be honest. I'm always one of the people who I'll reach out and I'll be like, hey, like I see you flagged a post of mine. Just curious. I try to make friends with the mods. I find that's what the easiest way to get around that is. And then even if it doesn't get you any sort of like benefit, at least when things happen, they're more willing to like be like, hey, this is why it happened. And then you can kind of adjust the course. Yeah, Steve just
I mean, I have one.
Yeah.
I don't have problems with individual moderators. I just have a problem with their way a lot of the boards are run, and not so much towards me, but towards the collective.
The community. Okay.
Yeah, the way it's run. You know what I mean? And I think, I had one run-in with one of them, but it was just, I think, a misunderstanding. I guess we'll call it that, but
that's the polite way to put it.
That's the polite way to put it. But I just think, I think people, when they have moderated jobs, I guess jobs you can call it, they just take it really seriously. You know what I mean?
Well, no, and I think, there's to some extent there's a reason for the role, and I think we see it in a lot of situations with some of the forums, like I know Pip's in the chat here, so the UC forum, like if not for the moderators, things would indefinitely devolve, and the moderators step in when it's appropriate, but not all people who step into a moderator role, no matter the platform, have that same mindset. And if you work on a platform or you moderate on a platform like Reddit, where heinous things are not always happening, you do probably start to get a lot more picky about what you want to enforce and how strictly you want to enforce things.
Yeah, I think the idea of moderation, like we sort of take it for granted that we all have all this infrastructure that as a user we get to have fun with, but as a creator, especially with all the P52 stuff, I'm like suddenly realizing these are all these things that you have to like roll out. Having that kind of organization, and not only just having that, but having it sustainable is quite difficult. And so that's really based around building culture out the gate and setting those expectations so that as the new users come in, they know how to behave. I think, UC is definitely without like people like Pip and Alan and Tom and all that, it would be pretty crazy. But I think for Reddit being as big as it is, I think maybe they have to be more crass because there's just so much. I don't know.
Well, and I think the fact that there's moderators. I think the fact that there's moderators for each community, there are definitely better communities in the moderation aspect versus some. Like you really go to some of the really, really big subreddits, and the moderators have a very subtle hand, but it's felt because the users have a better experience. In the smaller ones, I feel like they have a less subtle hand, and maybe it's because of the sheer amount of experience or lack thereof in comparison to the bigger subreddits.
Oh, okay.
And so, they do, and again, I think it goes to that thing of like, okay, like just because there's a rule that says only post, I mean, we're going to make a fictitious rule here up. You can only post an original thread once a day, but you find some amazing thing and you post it, twice a day. In some subreddits, there's going to be a moderator who's going to be like, that's against the rules. I have nothing better to do. Or there's not enough to keep me busy, and this is the one thing I get to moderate. I'm going to say no matter the content, no matter the intention behind it. But then you get to the big ones, and they're going to be more like, we have more important things to deal with. This doesn't rise to the level of concern because it's a one-time thing. It's not like these people are posting.
It's not spamming.
Yeah. And so it becomes like this, like, I think it's more of an opportunity to learn the subtlety than anything. And granted, even like the a lot of the subreddits I think a lot of us within the community would use have a good amount of members, but I don't really know how much activity there is behind those members. That's one of the deceptive things with Reddit is a community could have 100,000 members and 99,500 of them could be inactive. So
yeah, that's the algorithms change, and that's definitely a big one.
I think, and then that's how it affects people is the fact that if someone puts up a post and you can't post every 3 days, you have to post once every 3 days. You can't post more than that. But something amazing happens one day. Someone drops a bomb deck or whatever it may be, or you just saw a dope video of a magic trick or whatever it may be, and you want to post it, and the moderator messages you and be like, "Yo, like." You're not supposed to post this much, or interact with other people instead of posting this, or so there's it kind of depends probably on the day that they're having maybe. But
yeah, I mean it is, at the end of the day, humans are the subjective part of that process. Like otherwise, like if it's that blatant, then you could just have like a robotic moderator or something like that,
which ironically they do have an auto mod feature too for like really egregious behavior. And I think one of the other things too is the idea of moderation at that granular of a level is almost counter to the idea of community, because if you have a community that functions the way you want it to, by nature it's going to remove the attention from people who break outside of the desired behavior, because they're going to themselves self-moderate or ignore the content or things like that. And so over time, people who just don't get any interaction are going to go somewhere else. And that's not 100% guarantee. That's kind of a theoretical kind of drive behind it. But so again, like it's like you want to create this community culture, but if you're actually creating a community that you think it's going to, like you're actually creating the community you think you are creating, then why are you moderating things for people who you want to be a part of the community? Like they should be able to moderate themselves to some extent. I don't know. But I feel like we're getting very deep here about Reddit. So
I think it's important though, because that's basically P52, right? It's important information.
That's the big one. We haven't reached that point yet, but that'll be for the new build. That was for the initial rollout, but I'll have to
it's a lot of work.
Revamp it. Yeah. There's a lot of things. I think I'm like utterly fascinated with meaning and concepts. I mean, so you'll see that in a lot of my decks, but like understanding and stripping away a lot of that veneer of like what drives us, why do we collect, why does this deck work, and asking yourself, doing that like 5 why question. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's just like a little kid asking why and why and why. It's just like, well, so why do we need why does this deck work? And then it's like, well, it works because it sort of creates a depth in the deck that wasn't there before. I was like, why does that matter? And I was like, well, because it helps lend itself better to the story. And it's well, why does the story matter? And it's like, well, because it's exotic and there's not a lot of decks out there that have this tile pattern yet. So well, why does that matter? And it's like, well, because then if we can use this card stuff, maybe people will actually open the deck instead of just keeping them closed. And that's sort of what I want.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that, Alex.
I will say I'm really surprised at 2019's. That one is the one that I really thought people would open. Given how interactive it was. And it's interesting because everyone's like saying, like trying to like track the variations. I personally have problems with variations. I think like you just collect what you like. But like anyone that wants like all the variations, like I don't think people really recognize the whole journey part of the collection, which is like you're supposed to discover different rooms. And so like no one's really talked about the rooms. So there's 3 different rooms. There's like a palace or something else, but there's one that's a secret garden. And so there's only like 40 of them in each color. So if you're tracking the interiors and not the exteriors, the average like collection is about like each deck that you have is about like out of 100 or 150.
Oh, wow.
Okay. If you're counting interiors, obviously when you count exteriors, it changes the skew.
Right.
And I know some people would just switch that number and be like, oh, this is the garden deck. And it's like, well, it's part of the same collection. Let's just have fun. Like play it chill, guys. Like
yeah, but dude, you know what you just did saying that it's a 1 of 40 or 1 of 100 is the fact that now people have to open their decks, see which ones they have, and then they have to reach out and try to get all of them. It's like those completists. They have to get everyone.
And I have to say, I think probably as a creator, that's maybe not something I want to say you rely on, because I think rely on kind of sounds a bad way to do it, but I'm sure there's a part of it where you say, okay, I'm designing because I know people like to collect. And so I could create 1 or I could create 6 that encompasses the whole story and make these little variations because people are going to enjoy it more. But like, it shocks me because it shocks me how many people really are like completionists to an extreme level.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. That's like the double-edged sword of collecting. It's not that people in general, some people are collecting or completionists to extreme. It's that the general type of people that do collect are people that want to organize a small little world. And so it's because we've essentially like, all right, hey, internet, come in. We have this funnel. And then it's like, boom, who wants to collect? And the people that are more likely to be completionists or like achievers are also the kind of people that collect. And so that's why we'll see that kind of behavior more often in collections, because obviously, like, especially if you start showing off like, oh, hey, you have 5 of these and you only need 1 more. you're much more likely. There's this like, I don't know. I think I heard this in Freakonomics. This is a really old study, but it was basically like, I think it was like Cambridge. They were like looking over at like football games, and it was essentially, if you see a team that's like winning by a landslide, like the underdog's not going to come back usually. And if you see them losing by 1 point or one denomination, whatever the scoring is, based on whatever game it is, you should be betting on the losing team, because you're just close enough to have the motivation and the focus to push the second half. And more times than not, the person down by 1 will be the one to sort of complete and like reach that finish line, and be the winning team. So it's like, when you can sort of see that goal as a collector, it becomes much more achievable. I know some people that won't even collect low track decks because it's just like, I mean, why bother if I can't get it? So there's this really fine-tuned balance and how artists should be approaching one, how they think about who they're trying to attract, right? Because like you have people like Jackson, who's going for the gambit. He's going for the lifestyle brand, versus Low-Trek, who's going for very specifically small. All right, let's just saturate it, super high price per SKU, and figuring out how you want to play your line on who you want to be in what's arguably a pretty divisive market. It's sort of an art. But I'll digress. That was a weird tangent. But
no, that's what it's all about. Like I love hearing that stuff. I'm so I guess I don't even know what the word I'm looking, enamored by it, I guess is a good word. It's fascinating to me, just because there is so many. I mean, obviously we know, as depending on who puts a deck out, it'll sell, right? We've depending on who it is.
We've
doesn't
seen
matter
that.
Doesn't matter if it's a piece of poop on the back of a deck, it'll sell, you know, if the right person is selling it. But what it comes down to is in the collector's side, you know, because I think there's a big difference. You know, I feel like a lot of collectors, and I think there's different levels in collecting, and a lot of the card collectors don't collect Fontaine, they don't collect Orbit, they don't collect like OPC, they don't collect those cardistry collectible decks. You know what I mean? They're more so like your low track, you know, seasons yourself, you know, and you know, Geo, stuff like that. There's like those collectors, and then you have the other collectors that are collecting within their own kind of clique, I guess you can say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And magicians, I feel like magicians don't collect decks; they fucking use them, and that's what their goal is they get decks to use. But there are collectors within who are magicians that do collect based on what, you know, kind of area they fit in. But I think for the most part, like you said, it as a designer or creator, you want to try to figure out which market you're going to fall into, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard that too. It's like, oh, card collecting is a thing. I didn't even know it's a thing. And it's established niche market, but even a niche market has its niches. And so the idea of segmenting the kind of customers you're talking about with, oh, these are the people that collect cardistry, these are the magicians, these are the collectors. Like we just actually, me and Pip just popped out a buyer's guide for all the Black Friday crap going on. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And it's like, well, like, you know, actually this is a little too long. Let's segment it. Like, what are the kind of people? It's like, well, these are the people that want new releases. They don't care about like filtering through, so they just want to see the new stuff. These are the people that want collections. These are the people that are magicians and like do perform. Like the red DMCs just dropped, and like, okay, we'll pop that into the guide. Or like, these are the cardistry people. Obviously, they want to know what's up with the Fontaines. I think what's interesting is, in general, people that collect are almost always from a previous existing market. And so the crossover of people that do cardistry that find that they don't have the time to perform or practice end up starting to collect decks. But because they had the background of cardistry, they're collecting that Fontaine stuff still, even though there's arguably other decks that might have more art value. But for them, they've grown up on a minimalistic palette, like to recondition those customers is not worth artist people to like pursue them or vice versa. And so sometimes like I'll see people saying like, oh yeah, it's a little lazy of them to like keep on popping this out. It's like, well, I mean, no, yeah, it's easy. I wouldn't say lazy though, to like pop out a recoloration of Fontaine, because like he has established a flavor palette of what people want and expect. And so for their brand values, he is on the straight and narrow. And it's easy for us who do like a little bit more art on their cards to judge that. But I mean, that's at that point, it might as well just be a different market, right? Like, I mean, I'm judging people that crochet kitten mittens. Like, I don't know.
Kitten mittens. I love it. I love that episode.
Dude, that was like college, man. That was so good. I haven't laughed that hard ever.
I haven't either. Those of you who don't know, go look up It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Such a good show.
Kittens Mittens.
That is honestly such a phenomenal show all around.
But that show is literally, that episode was literally the best episode ever. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because Kevin Ho actually said it really well when we had him on the show, and kind of explained a little bit more behind the cardistry aspect of designs that I didn't really think about or know. I just didn't know. Basically what it comes down to is, like you said, in all these different markets, whether it's clothes, cards, jujitsu, clothing, whatever it is, pocketbooks, I'm sure, shoes. I'm sure there are those brands that are hype brands, right? And they create the hype because it's a model. They have this model that works for all hype brands. All hype brands do the same model. They limit things, and that creates need and want, for collectors, or for people who want to feel like they're in the crowd. Like let's take Supreme for example. It's like if you see someone wearing Supreme, they're cool. Basically what it comes down to is they either waited in line for a long time, or they were quick on their computer, or whatever it may be, and I can go on Supreme and say I wouldn't wear one of their things, but what it comes down to is, this coming from someone who's wearing an Abercrombie sweatshirt, but
if you hadn't given up away, no one would have known. Yeah,
I had to give it away. Hey, I'm always good for throwing myself under the bus. That's for sure. But I think what it comes down to is that, and that's where we're talking about brands and their target audience, right? It's I'm not a fan of Fontaine, but Zach is a very smart kid. He's an intelligent kid, and he knows what his market is, and he knows what his goal is with his company. And just because I wouldn't run my company that way doesn't mean it's wrong. I, of course, don't have to agree with it. Not saying that I don't agree, but just like any company, I don't agree with everything someone does, but I understand his business model, and why he's doing it, and the brands he's collaborating with, and whatever it is, that him or any other brands are doing. They're doing it for a reason. Sometimes it works for brands, and sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot, and we see it in the community, and those are the people that, their time here would be limited, based on their, I guess, way of being, and we see it in any community, The
flash in the pan.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's when you think about it that way, like that's it changes up your mentality of how you perform. but I mean, usually it's not for the best when you think short term.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about just seeing a bunch, just how you do things, how Jackson does things. Like everybody is doing things so different, and each of the brands have followers, and that's the cool thing. It's just like music. It's like, and we all have different tastes, and that's why I think since I've been here, that's why it seems like the community is growing. Obviously it's always like a revolving door. There's people leaving, there's people coming in, and stuff like that. But I mean, that is the cool thing about any type of collecting or anything. There's always what Tyler likes. I probably won't like it.
Oh, really?
I like Skull.
I
like Skulls. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is funny. This is actually funny.
What are your collections then? All right, sorry, go ahead.
So I think, like, for me, I'm very much like a visuals on a deck more so attract me than anything, in the sense of I can appreciate a good looking deck, whether it's within my normal vein of collection or not. Obviously I have low trek decks, I have a handful of Stockholm 17, some really collector oriented decks, but at the same time too, like, some of my favorite decks are like some of the really vibrant seasonal tally hos that they do. Like, I just love the way they look when you like open them and play with them, and the way they fan, and the little attention to detail that they put in some of that stuff. So like for me, I'm kind of all over the board a little bit with my collection, but also it also ties into the fact that, like, thankfully I'm not a completionist with a lot of that stuff, because I can pick up a set or see a set and be like, I like 3 of the 5. I'm only going to get those 3. Like, I don't have this this need to be like, I need all of them to put in a carrot case on my bookshelf behind me. Otherwise I'm going to feel incomplete, thankfully, because otherwise I'd be broken. I'd be doing this show from a cardboard box right now. But
yeah,
you were headed there, buddy. That's
I mean, listen, I hit the ground running in the community collecting,
like
and
everybody does,
and then really quickly, and I think this is a common thing, and thankfully I was able to like pull the ripcord and step back a little bit. And I mean, I think in my first 3 months collecting, I bought like 300 decks.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
It's totally. I was the same way. Like 300 or 500 decks in the first like 2 months, and I was like.
And now coming up on like a year, I'm maybe at like 400 decks. But those last 100 that I've bought have been much more. Well, those last 100 that I've gotten, a lot of them were probably Kickstarters that are just fulfilling now that I bought in those first 3 months still. And then some of the other ones, I'm much more discerning with the ones I actually pick up. So like for me to go out of my way and buy a deck now, it really has to speak to me in one way or another, because I found a lot of the stuff I was collecting literally sits in a drawer behind this, this setup here.
Yeah.
Stuff now that I actually like will end up on the bookshelf real quick. And those are the only times I'll buy something, is like, am I going to put it on the bookshelf? Do I want it to be visible? Do I want to see it every day?
Yeah.
And for me, it's funny because 2 of my favorite brands that I collect are Nox and
wow, okay,
and Lautrec. So they're 2 like literally at the opposite ends of the spectrum. And the reason why I collect Nox is because I'm a big fan of simple and classy looking, and I think the one shade of color, and they're super cheap. So when I first got into collecting, I didn't have a job. I mean, I had a job, but things were difficult at the time. So when I got into it, I was buying cheaper decks. I started to get all the Nox stuff and stuff like that. But I think for the most part, I like decks that are more have more of a design, like your Lautreks, your decks. I like some of Lorenzo's decks. But I'm super picky when it comes to, I'm not a big fan of like bicycle decks. I don't like, I'm not a big fan of cardistry decks.
Cardistry the fashion, that's a little tough. It's pretty wild. You hate it.
I mean, I like random decks. I like decks with story. I like kind of spiritual decks. I like decks that kind of, I guess, relate to me in a way. Decks that I can connect to and that I think are cool. And I might think like I think OPC decks are great, but I don't have them all. I don't collect them all. I love the brand. I love what Cam stands for and stuff like that. But I don't collect them all, and that's where I think I kind of carry on, like what Tyler said. Is I originally was like, I have to have them all. I have to have them all. And then eventually I was like, F that. Like, I don't need them all. I can't afford them all, first of all.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is, I just get the ones that I like best. If a red, blue, a green, a yellow, an orange, and I don't know, another weird color comes out, I'm probably just going to get the blue, So
Yeah.
I think it's just based on that for the most part. I'm not a completionist that much.
Yeah, this kind of experience I think is just so common, and it's basically just like you're introduced to it, and the first rule of collecting, you just grab them all, right? Like, so that's established. But then, as you start to play in this field, what happens? You're introduced to constraint number one, and constraint number one is usually money. But sometimes it's like how difficult it is to get it. Maybe it's limited edition, this and this. Yeah. And it's this whole exploratory field in which like you're starting with like, oh, I have a lot. Quite literally, it's just by definition of how many decks I have is how I'm evaluating collecting. And once you get to a certain point, you realize like, well, I'm not appreciating all this as much. It's more about the hunt. More about the experience, the journey rather than the destination kind of thing. And then you start to fine tune who you are as a collector and what decks express yourself. And so I think that's quite literally why Portfolio 52 got developed, because the whole goal is to help navigate how newbies can come in and sort of bypass or at least quicken. Because I think you're sort of building a foundation of the culture of having, it's not a hazing phase, but it's like, all right, everyone has to go through their buy 100 decks in a year or more kind of thing. But then like sort of bypassing that and sort of, I think the availability of information and what decks are out there is the whole goal of Portfolio 52, so that you can start to fine tune what kind of decks that you're gonna respond to and be a better expression of yourself, rather than, oh, I'm a person with a lot of money that can just throw it at social media, and the only things are 5, 6, 7 brands of cards because they're the ones that you're interacting with Instagram. And so again, the whole idea of P52 is just, hey, you know what? Like, I know you're new, but based on how you're liking certain decks, you might actually like vintage. So let's save you the first $4,000 you're going to spend on modern decks. Move you into that, or vice versa. Like, right. And so that's sort of the bigger picture goals of the site right now. In order to do all that, the first base, the foundation, is to just like gain a critical mass on the site of quality of deck pages, which we have to improve as well. Improving the searches and then improving just like the community experience, in which right now it's a single user experience, but we're eventually gonna sort of hopefully next year phase into that social experience.
Yeah. Now, what about you? What are your top collecting decks?
So
and don't say seasons.
Yeah, this guy Alex Chin, he's so good. I can't get over how good he is.
Yeah, but that bastard doesn't come out with enough decks. He only does like 6 a year, and it's all at the same time. It's annoying.
I will say I'm a feast and famine kind of guy. I'm a sprinter. I don't like the gradual procession of time. I
love it.
On or off, like we were talking about earlier. But what I collect. So I'm gonna say I've gotten really into SignDucks lately,
Okay.
and I think what it does to me is I like the intimacy of having that artist sign it. The numbers are fine, it's just whatever. Obviously, if I can have a lower number, that's good. But to me, prioritizing that sign deck is just like, oh, the artist touched it, he signed it, he cared. Even if he used batch signing it, it was something like for me, I care about. I think gilded used to be hot for me. So all the gilding that is coming out by literally United States Playing Cards, Jackson, all of them.
In Chicago.
He's my local gilder.
He's in Chicago. He's in Chicago.
I gave him like 4 gross of cards for him to practice on. My biggest regret is not creating an exclusivity contract. Yeah. Basically, what happened is like, all right. We worked together, we prepped it, like we finally got something going, and then it was just like, well, I'm just gonna go with everyone else, and it's just like, oh no. And I think to me, I think I'm not really salty about him working with other people. I am salty that the value of gilding sort of got exacerbated to the point of where it is. Yeah. Because once Jackson started leveraging that with the subscription to create variation from like a 1,500 deck run, and it's like, okay, well, let's do 500, 200, 100, and then the rest can be artist proofs. It begins to sort of desensitize the market, and I thought like this is a 3-year technique that we can just like glide into whatever new tech comes out. And I think it just got too big too quick.
I mean,
I created the monster. The monster.
Yeah. Well, hey, the crazy thing is that's why he's overwhelmed right now, and all his stuff's backed up. Is because everybody's gilding decks now, and everybody's using him.
Yeah. Speak of the devil. Here you go.
Yeah.
The man himself pops in.
No, it was just like, I remember I was like talking with them, and they were like bringing in this machine from Switzerland just to like double up their infrastructure. I remember that like I was like talking with Lance, and like his like thing blew up, like because they didn't have the right kind of like voltage, and it was like a whole thing. I remember like talking with him, and they're just like, oh man, I let this get away. And so now I'm a little more careful about what I work with for research and development.
Jackson ruining everything.
That Jackson guy. Oh man.
Jackson, dude. I hate that guy. I'll never have him on the show again.
That is too
dude, I heard that you guys did like I was with Jackson for the awards ceremony. We were talking with Lee, and he's just like, "What are you talking about? Are you expecting a 6-hour interview?" I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? 6 hours?" And it's like, apparently, he spent like 6 hours with you guys.
6.5 hour.
Yeah,
show.
It was a long one.
Yeah, and
it's a marathon.
Yeah, well,
that's longer than a marathon.
Steve, don't just announce it in the drop. Don't you? Nope.
What?
Nope.
What? Come on.
Nope.
Dude, we get
That's not how it goes. I know. We'll have an official one, but yeah. So for anyone out there who's wondering, that's a teaser. Just remember that. Alex, we'll give you the benefit, and we'll tell you in the post show. So
we'll tell you in the after party.
Yeah, but I mean, that was honestly, and the funny thing about it is like Steve warned me with that one. He's like, dude, this is gonna be a long show. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, I got work the next day. Like, it's gonna be like, okay, most of our shows are like 1 hour and 15 to 2 hours long. Like, this is gonna be like 3 hours. Like, I'm okay with that.
Now I am in California, so I'm 3 hours behind him. And I obviously love to talk. Jackson obviously loves to talk. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, so honestly, like it got to a point that like I just had it like Jackson. Well, I think at one point I yawned and Jackson called me out for it.
Yeah. And
then like at some point everyone's like, "So we're gonna keep going?" And I had to just be like, "Nah, like game over. I'm tired." I'm
I mean, 6 is long.
It was 2:30 in the morning, and I knew. And at the time we were doing recaps for the show. So we would find a clip within the show that was somewhere between like 3 to 5 minutes long, is kind of like a teaser to get people to go watch the full thing. And those dropped the next day at 11 a.m., which means that post-show, I still had to run through the entire show to find a clip if I didn't write something down while we were doing it, edit that, put it in Premiere, put all the stuff on, develop a thumbnail for it, get it up, and then do the same for the podcast version, which is audio only, which drops that Sunday morning before I could go to bed. So by the time I got to bed, it was probably like 3:45 in the morning.
Wow.
And I was just like, as Pip's in the chat shaming me here, it's 3 a.m. here, noob.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank
and
you.
It's funny because Jackson and I are on here, and Jackson's on he's on East Coast time as well. So it's, super late for Jackson, and I'm like, oh, let's go for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more hours, And it's,
Steve, I'm being overruled, Steve, so.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Okay.
So
yeah, go for it.
We're going to unleash it. December 19th. We are doing.
It's a Saturday.
It's Saturday, December 19th. We are doing a 24-hour show with Jackson.
Wow.
So from 8 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday.
Good question.
To 8 a.m. on Sunday.
Yeah.
Eastern time, we're going to be running full speed with Jackson as
our
co-host.
We're coming on and off. There's going to be some fun segments in it. We're going to have some designer showdowns.
He's going to release his crew, isn't it? Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
we're a 24-hour thing now.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna. We have probably 20 or so guests coming on.
Yeah.
Like Tyler said, we're gonna have some showdowns, some designer showdowns.
Fun segments. There's gonna be.
Where's my invitation?
Well, now that you're on the show, you are more than excited. Yeah, dude.
I mean, we were talking. We have to wait after the show. We'll give you the invitation.
We like to make sure people enjoy our talking to us before we lock them down in these things. So, because it may end up being that we have a designer showdown for you at like 6 a.m. Sunday morning. So, careful what you wish for. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting one. We're really excited about it. Obviously, there's a lot of logistics going into it. Thank you, Pip. I guarantee you, here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about it. I'm going to track everyone who's on there, and whoever is on for the longest, we're going to do like some sort of check-ins. Whoever's on for the longest, maybe the top 10 people on the stream for the longest, there's going to be a special giveaway. So,
and the person who's here the longest, we're going to give them something special.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually communicating. You can't just leave your live stream. You can't leave your YouTube on for 24 hours.
Yeah, how do you verify? How do you verify that they're there? Do they have to respond within like 10 minutes?
Every hour, it's gonna be like, "Yo, is this person here? Is this person here?"
We'll do like a Mr. Beach touch the screen game. There's no $10,000 prize, but we'll figure something out for sure. So Jackson also said, and ...
No more ands, Jackson. No more ands. That's all we're giving up right now. And
you could do like a little like screener roll call or something that invites engagement and participation every hour, just to wake people up. Because honestly, 24 hours, that's fun. And you're gonna get different windows of time, but in between those like time zones, transitioning people. That's going to be tough. You need to like maintain that momentum.
So we're looking into a couple things that they do with Twitch streams as well. We're in Twitch chats because we do stream to Twitch as well. But Twitch also, Steve has a lot of ideas. We're doing the full 9 here. One thing we tell every guest when we do the show, and Alex will confirm this, is we basically roll in and we say this is an unscripted show. We like to keep it as organic as possible. We have no topics that we have in mind to discuss, and we're just going to see where the conversation goes. And that obviously is not going to work for a 24-hour episode. So we do have some planning going into this. We have some preparation. We have some really fun like side segments that are maybe going to be, 30 minutes an hour where we'll be there and commenting, but we may not be the main focal point of the screen. So all of you will not literally have to watch us for 24 hours. There will be other things in there. But
we're doing that so Tyler can take a nap.
Yeah, I need some. I'm going to be napping. I already figured out.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
I figured out how I can replace my video with me just every 5 minutes on a loop, just being like, it will be good. But
I'm gonna call him up. I'm gonna have to do roll calls with him.
There you go.
The other thing we were looking at though too, and this is something that an idea that I've seen used in Twitch before, is like interactive games in the chat. So it may also be something where we have like a trivia in the chat that's running with a bot or something. So people who interact with the trivia will do our roll call for us, things like that. So we'll see how that goes.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's
Frank,
good.
Frank says, "Let's place bets who will yawn first." Tyler or Steve.
I mean, I yawn at
Tyler
like
already lost.
yeah. I'm on calls all day, and like I think if I talk too much, I yawn. It could be like 11 o'clock in the morning, and I just woke up. I'm gonna yawn, so I can't. That's not a fair one. Talking about it's making me want to yawn. So, but
Yeah.
Alex, you are more than invited, not only to be a participant in a designer showdown, but also to chat. Come on, keep us awake. Tell us funny stories, whatever you would like. It'll be a good time though, man. We're really excited.
Just to show you. Let me hide the rest of these people here. Just to show you.
You can tell how high tech our reveals are.
That's okay.
All right.
No, you just gotta do what you gotta do.
Just to show you that you were on our list. Wait.
There you go.
That means nothing, Steve.
It's literally written in
You
pen.
could've just
It's
wrote
literally
my name.
No, but look, it's look at it.
It's not at the bottom now.
No, it's not at the bottom, but look.
Yeah.
All right, there we go.
It's on the list. It's on
Okay,
the
I'm good.
list.
No, we definitely we actually sat down and we were like, who would be a good time to have on this show? Who are some of the guests we've really had a blast with, who we know would enjoy it and make it energetic? So we've really been trying to figure out ways that this is going to be as exciting, not only for us, but for everyone who tunes in. And Alex, you definitely will be a part of that, because I'm sitting here realizing too, like as we've had this discussion, I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I feel like I watch TV a lot after work, and Alex is over there sitting there reading everything he wants to know about on Wikipedia and in books, just getting mad smart. And I'm like, yeah, man, the 5 whys.
No. I mean, I talked earlier. I have this very binary lifestyle, and so when I'm not on that track that you're talking about, I am very much on the TV track.
Okay.
To the point of like I, instead of Deckin Around 24 hours, it's Netflix 24 hours in the background.
What's your go-to on Netflix?
All right. So admittedly, I being put on the spot. Actually, there's nothing great on Netflix now. But no. Queen's Gambit was actually really good.
My
I have
girlfriend
not watched it.
loved
And
that.
I
Absolutely,
couldn't do
It
it.
is really good.
I watched I watched the last episode, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. So usually it depends on what my goals are. Like because like I actually put that on usually if I'm in the zone. So National Playing Card this year, that was like basically we almost didn't have a deck, and then it was just like literally a month before October 17th. This is like I can't just let this fail. Like this is like I can't. And so that was when I was like, okay, well, all right, I'm not going to be able to do this illustration in time. And this, it just isn't going to work. And so that forced me to go Illustrator, work with them. And actually it worked. It was a model that actually worked out pretty well that I might pursue more. But the week before launch, quite literally, I'm I had a background in pretty toxic college culture of working late, architecture studio. It's just so it was just all-nighters aren't unknown. And it's just okay, is this my life? Once you establish, I am going to be up forever for this period of time. It ends at the end of this week. And so that week, I literally got an average of about, no joke, 3 hours a night, trying to make sure it happened. Because I was just working with the printer just to even get a proof. I got the proof basically day of, and then I made the video day of, and then I popped it to the convention. But it was just sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, and once you accept your pain, you're I'm holding this rock kind of thing, then it becomes oh, okay, it's not that bad. And so to avoid that pain of holding that rock over my head forever, I put on Netflix. And so my go-to shows are usually things I watched in college. So like just old nostalgia stuff. So like
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
No, my fiance loves that actually.
It's like Steve's favorite show.
Is it really? All right, so
bro.
All right, I don't know Buffy as well, but I know the world. Do you watch the boy version? What is it,
Angel, yeah.
Hell yeah, watch Angel.
David Boreanaz.
my fiance would have fun talking with you.
Yeah. David Boreanaz.
My girlfriend and I are all about it.
Anything Joss Whedon is amazing. I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah,
it's funny because we're actually going through the whole season of Buffy now, like within the past like month or so, and watching it is hilarious because it's so bad.
Well, I think they're also playing to their audience too, right? Like, you know, these like people that want the vampire, right? Like, and that's like on one of your sort of mainstream female strong lead shows back in that day.
Yeah, no, that's Doc
right?
Angel. That's the other one.
Yeah,
Jessica Alba.
Yeah, I watched. I watched that.
Heck yeah, reasons. You watched that.
I watched that for different reasons.
Heck yeah, no, dude, you watched it for the same reason I watched it. Come on, dude.
Oh my gosh.
But like talking about Buffy, so How I Met Your Mother, that's one of the shows I'll put in the background. That features that redhead Lily. And then Friends did not age very well for me.
I didn't see one episode of Friends.
I have a tough time with Friends.
I haven't watched one episode.
I have a tough time with Friends. I've seen it once. It's all right, but I don't care enough to watch it again. And I know people who enthusiastically will watch it repeatedly.
I hate that.
Like when it's ingrained on you, right? Like that first impression, and you're just building that meaning over time. That's the value of reboots, right? People are like seeking that nostalgia, seeking that recreation of meaning. And so like I get that. I think though, especially with the change in culture, like Ross is sort of a chode and like racial. I mean, like, well, the characters don't age very well. I think
they're just they're so cringy. You know what? I picture like in nowadays in today's times, I think Friends is TikTok. Like Friends is the total TikTok sitcom, and it's just cringy to me.
Really quick, if I accidentally disappear, it's because I need to pop a battery in.
You know,
I don't got the lights.
I'll send you the link to the continuous battery.
So the good thing about this setup though is if your camera dies, your audio will still work. So we may not be able to hear you or see you, but we'll still be able to hear you while you're fixing the battery. So
that is a really good point, because I would have probably snuck into the bathroom and you would just hear a lot of flushing, a lot of hand washing.
What kind of battery is this?
I was like, oh man, that Tyler and that Steve. Oh.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to be off this damn show. Jackson says Jackson says Gilmore Girls for the win.
Oh man,
all that fast talking gets me tense. So much anxiety.
That's all I talk in. I'm from Boston, dude. That's how we talk.
that show just never did it for me. But like, I think at that time there were a lot of like similar, like that was like the Seventh Heaven, Gilmore Girls, like all those shows on WB at the time. Before it became like CW, that was like, I feel like those are iconic shows for a generation.
Seventh Heaven. What was that chick's name on Seventh Heaven?
Jessica Biel.
Jessica Alba. No, Jessica Biel. Yeah, Jackson or Justin's wife, right?
Yeah, she's the only one who really I think came out of that and did anything beyond the show. I mean.
Okay, so straight up, I don't know how I know this fact. I'm not like one of those like actor trivia people. The father of that Christian family, like montage, at like whatever unit, however you describe family on a show, he turned down the role to be one of the lead characters in Alien, I believe.
Oh wow!
And he regrets it to this day.
I'm sure, yeah. Like, damn, that's crazy. And it's funny though, because I think there's a lot of those lost opportunities in Hollywood, and so many actors and actresses who turn down roles because they don't think it's good, and then it goes on to critical acclaim. And you're always just like, you know what though? Like, I think that's something I see actually a lot, like in my day-to-day too, with like stocks and things like that. people are like, oh man, I should have bought Apple 10 years ago when it was $60. And it's like, okay, well, you didn't. And like, you can't live in the past like that because you miss the opportunities that come now.
I mean, you could buy Apple a month ago for $90. So you should, if you made the mistake and didn't buy it at 60, you should buy it now at 90.
Yeah. Living with regret. I think that was like one of the biggest things I cannot overcome to like sort of like grow the business when I like left college. It was just like, I used to live in a lot of what ifs, and like problems with what ifs are that you visualize a whole like fantasy of like what could have been, and at the end of the day, you could still do that exact thing except for your current position and your current path. And so that's like, to me, just all this wasted effort. And it took me a really long time to realize that, because I think we find a lot of like solace in being comforted by like, man, if I only won the lottery, if I only invested in Apple and all that. And it's just like, well, like that, if only logic could still apply to right now, like if only I do X, Y, Z to make my life better in this proportion. I think it's just like we hide behind the fact that we actually have to do it. We actually have to walk that walk. And it's just like,
that's for sure. Yeah, it's not the best practice, that's for sure, is to go on the what ifs, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to kind of keep ourselves down and be disappointed with ourselves, you know?
Yeah. And I think social media in general has sort of exacerbated that culture a little bit, for better or for worse.
The truth.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question, since we've been talking about all this awesome stuff that I love talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to back up a little bit, rewind, okay? And then we can get back into other stuff. But now, what got you into the whole card world? Like, what brought you here? Was it magic?
Yeah. So that's a really good one. That's a good question, interviewee. Or interviewer.
You know, Tyler and I are very big fans of your typical interview, but we do have to ask a couple of the typical questions. So that was one of them. The other question that is the typical interviewer asks is, what is your social security number? You can text us that.
I'm going to drop that in the chat.
Good thing I have LifeBlock. I heard that guy got hacked. It's just like, well, that's not great for your service.
Dude,
I felt so bad for him. Like, I'm sure for everyone else it was fine. It's just like being so cocky that you're putting your social security number on a truck, on a commercial, globally. It's probably not. You're attracting some pretty talented people, I assume.
Yeah, and they're probably 12 years old too. Those talented people.
Yeah. So what got me into cards? So I think I went the standard route. I remember. So first deck that I got. I was into Magic first, so that was the big one. Actually, for my deck sniff, I have my first deck.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go grab it. Go grab it, and we'll segue into it after this. Oh wait, I haven't seen Stu on, so
actually,
we haven't seen him on here yet.
Eventually, we're gonna hit a blackout, and so we'll cross that bridge when it happens.
Yeah.
But basically, it's I remember I got one of my friends was actually into it was actually cardistry first. I was always into Magic as a kid. Remember your little magic wand, which is like the 6 little jewels on it, and you force your selection, and then some sponge balls, and that was an old mall cart that I saw. But then I got into cards a little bit more as like your main focus of close-up Magic, and I actually diverged from Magic specifically into cardistry. And for cardistry at the time, the people that were on the board, this was like a VCR tape. Like I don't even know if you guys have VCR now, but like I would put it in and it was cap cuts. Cap Cuts, I think D5 or something, and it was just, you know what? Like I'll break the deck open, but I think this is the only one I remember still. But it's like a Sybil packet trick.
Sybil, yeah, Sybil.
Yeah, and it's this like dude in a suit on a VCR, and I'm just trying to do these things, and every time I drop it, I have to run to the VCR, stop the VCR, rewind it like 20 seconds, go back, pick up all the cards, try it again, stop.
The good old
and
days.
and it's worse because packet tricks, like you have all your hands. Like if you don't know what he did, like, fuck. I have to like rewind and like try to make sure
Try
I
it
get
all
that
over again.
That is brutal. It's
But yeah.
the invention of the DVD changed life in so many ways. Like it really, and here's the funny thing though, and I appreciate the VCR reference as well, because then you also know that transitionary period where like you could get things on DVD and watch them and pause them and rewind, and it was a lot easier, but there was still that period, and there's the blackout. There was still that period where you couldn't record things to DVD or DVR things. And
I think
he
broke his leg.
Yeah. But then like there was that whole period where like, okay, but if you wanted to record something off television, you still had to use a VCR. And so there was that like weird middle ground where like when they still didn't have DVRs, you were kind of just like in that weird middle ground, and you're like, all right, like I have this great high quality, high def video that I can watch, but if I want to record something off like the sports game, you still have to record it on a VCR and watch it in like crappy quality.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Who records sports games? That's just weird. Just watch highlights on ESPN.
Oh, I think the people that record sports games are the people that are like so into it, they want to see the plays and like why they decided. And so they're the people that are like coaches and stuff.
I don't know about that. I think it's just people who want to yell at the game. They're like the keyboard warriors of our time of social media, you know?
I mean, yeah, essentially.
Those were the good days though, because they just yelled to themselves and no one would hear it. So
guess who just showed up?
Who showed up?
Stu just showed up. He must have smelled. He must have smelled us talking about him.
Stu, tomorrow in the US is Thanksgiving, so we transitioned this to a Wednesday showing. As a heads up for people too, in December, because we obviously have two holidays, Christmas and New Year's, we will be doing 2 more Wednesday shows in December, so keep an eye out for that. But
yes,
let us do the deck stiff.
Let's do the deck stiff.
So is there a specific way I should be?
Whatever feels best to you.
Okay. If you have a new deck that you could open, that would be even better.
All right. So I thought about it, and I specifically chose my first deck because it's an old deck, and I feel like a lot of people would have done new decks. So
let's do it. This might have an interesting. Yeah, might smell like
this
hands.
deck is actually an old bridge deck. Because my hands as a kid weren't like big enough to like do all the cardistry packet stuff. And so like you go thin to like start to handle that. But it's been so long, and as a kid you're so poor. So this is like covered in like you can't really see the shine.
Don't even tell us what's covered in. You don't even want to know.
No. It's like shipping tape.
All I have
like
to say is
as long as
you aren't using those while watching Doc Angel, we're good to go.
Oh
my gosh.
All right. I'm gonna take this. Or I'll slip it.
Nice.
It wasn't bad. Like you can smell the older papers.
Yeah.
It honestly smells like the tables at the vintage table collections. It's got the
mothballs. It smells like mothballs.
No, it's like oiled papers over time, and they get that saturation into it. Yeah. But yeah, I hope my smell was up to snuff.
Nice. That was
definitely. That was awesome.
I think here's the fun thing about a smell is everyone has their own style for it. Just like playing cards, everyone has their own taste in playing cards. Everyone goes about their sniff differently, and you do what makes you comfortable with it.
That's right.
And join us for this.
Everybody does it different. Alex Pandrea basically almost put it in a decanter, and he kind of sniffed it like a fine wine. So Jackson says, make sure you ask Alex. There you go. Make sure you ask Alex about him doing street magic in Vegas at 52 plus Joker convention.
Oh man. No. So I remember what he's talking about. I don't remember it partially because you're in Vegas at a convention, and
I have a better idea. I think we should do this on the 24-hour show, because that way Jackson can like totally kind of banter with him, because right now we don't know if it's true. We don't know what you're going to tell us is the
Jackson got naked. He ran around.
That sounds 100% plausible though. Like that's
it totally does. He was drinking some whiskey. He drank 6 bottles.
That was true.
Naked.
We were drinking whiskey. That was true.
I mean,
that was actually with Paul. Paul was still around at the time. But
that's funny. All right, you want to tell the story? We can tell the story. It will just be better to have you guys on the show at the 24th.
That's fine. We can hold it for that.
No, you can tell it now, but it will be even more fun to bring it back up for those who haven't heard it yet. That way, he'll be able to.
Yeah. So the show essentially, this was when Lee, I think, came by, and this was his first time. I don't think he was president yet. No, that doesn't make sense. Like, he was just there. He loved cards. And it was his last time in the US for quite a while, because then he had some like green card issues. But he was there, and he's just like, bam, like on his hotel table, and it's just me and Paul and Jackson. And we're like, this is like the best vodka. It won so many awards. And it was Tito's. And now Tito's is like an everyday thing. But like at the time, I'd never heard of Tito's. I'm like, and so we take drinks, and it's good, and it's tasty, whatever. And I'm not sure if this was before or after. Yeah, Jackson mentioned that I did fall asleep. We buy the show, this like fancy, let's watch French people dress as starfish and do gymnastics show. It's nice. Cirque du Soleil. That's literally what it was. There was like I remember specifically because there was a guy as a starfish, and I was like, oh, that's. I mean, he actually does look like a starfish. Yeah. But essentially, the alcohol kicked me, and the lighting was dim, and so I just like took a little nap, and then after the show was over, I was ready to go. And
you took a nap during Cirque du Soleil?
Yeah. So that wasn't the best use of my money.
That's an expensive.
Yeah, that's.
But he charged me. And so then we walked around, and there's a street magician, and I think he was just doing like a 3-card monte, something really simple. But it wasn't like a hustler. It was like actually a guy, and I think he had a routine. It wasn't anything special. And he walked away for a second. I feel bad saying that because like I'm not a professional magician by any means.
He must have been really bad then.
He wasn't great. No, he wasn't. But and then he left, and I think his girlfriend and her friend were there, and having the confidence of Tito's, as well as the energy of sleeping through an $80 concert. I was like, all right, let's do this.
What do you have to lose?
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, there's an intermission, and Alex Chin is on board, and we're gonna do a little show. And so I just did like a simple ACR routine, like we just ambitious card routine where they find a card, and then we lose it, and we make it pop, and we lose it, and we make it pop. And I don't really know what the moment Jackson's looking for. I think what it was is that, the guy came back, and he's like, what are you doing with my stuff? And I'm like, it's just his deck. I was only playing with his deck, but I think it was because I got a better reaction from his girlfriend than he did.
Alex wrecked them.
That was the problem, but
That's funny.
Man, that is too
Liquid
good.
courage, man. It's all about the liquid courage.
yeah.
That is too funny. Well, it sounds, and it's funny because I know both Steve and I, our first interaction with the 52 Plus Joker convention was this year, and it being online, I feel like while it had a fun vibe to it, I don't feel like it had the same level of excitement that a normal one would have.
Yeah. I think, well, obviously you're missing the intimacy of being person to person. There's a few reasons. Obviously, like safety. Like, I mean, the generation there also skews a little older, so it's just like asking for trouble to do that. But I was talking with them, and essentially, like, it was enough of a success where they are hoping to sort of roll out maybe twice or 3 times a year, just like these small little conventions. So it won't necessarily be the same scale, but then it's a better way to pace presence over time.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it like interactive more frequently.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. I think a lot of it is conditioning people and how to interact and expectations. I sort of pitched the idea of classes, and like maybe you get to interact in the convention doing like asking questions and like things like, oh, can you grade my deck? The condition, how do you grade? Or like deck design, like what do you think of this deck? What would you improve? And stuff like that, which I think would be really interesting in terms of engagement, because in the live shows, they're fun. They're also a lot of sightseeing and not necessarily interacting. I think a lot of interacting comes from the people that do show up again. So it's like me, it's Jackson, it's Dan, who he's always so much fun because he's an actual professional magician. Kevin, and it's just like you're talking with people, you're having fun, and seeing people in real time for arguably a market that is quite isolating in nature, like collecting. Or even on the back end designing and all that, it is refreshing. So
that
makes total sense.
Yeah, and I think it would be great though for them to kind of do that, because I think it does allow the option to obviously not only get people back together, but it really does just make it more than just a once a year thing. That once a year kind of extravaganza doesn't need to stop, but the idea of like a quarterly virtual leading up to that, it gets people. I think it also helps build a much more open community. I think, not to say we don't have an open community. I think, being such a small community, we all know a good amount of the people within it, but I think it opens up more communication across the board. Like you said, there's a handful of people who you talk to throughout the thing just because they're the more active ones. But I think if everyone's there and everyone's seeing the same faces, probably also being a little bit more of an introverted kind of a hobby, it might start to be a little more comfortable where they can say, oh, I've seen this guy 3 times this year. I can reach out about something and just start a conversation and really open those channels that I think that once a year doesn't make it as easy to do. I think there's a lot of people who, for that once a year, they really want to go. They'll be extroverted for 3 days and then they're good for the year. But like if you make it more of a comfortable thing, they probably would get more in tune with that and more comfortable with the idea as a whole.
I 100%. Like, meaning is built over time, and I think a lot of people don't recognize that. And it's that slow roll. There's old ad agency head who's interviewed about his client was Mercedes, and it's just like, what's the point of all this advertising? This was back in the day, pre-social media. We were just like, well, we're advertising and we're doing all this like gross-based advertising, and it's harder to measure ROI. Again, back then, TV views. They're just like, it's because we want the 7-year-old to finally realize they want our Mercedes by the time they are at that stage. And so it's a lot of preconditioning that you don't recognize that us as people. And I think in general, that's just how humans think. We don't really think about the back roll. Like when we see like, oh, the runaway success, we don't see about all the stuff underneath that led up to that point. And so I think a more recent ad study was like Coca-Cola. They're like, okay, well, being exposed 7 or 8 times over time is sort of where you start getting to the tipping point over a specific window. And then I found another study that like even superseded that now with the social media thing. Really quick, I'm gonna pause that. Can I get a glass of water? Really quick?
Dude, yeah.
All right.
Yes, you have permission to get water.
Cue dancing bear music.
I don't know what that is, but okay, we'll cue it.
Stu's looking for suggestions for his Friday. For anyone who has good suggestions for Stu to occupy his time now that the show will not be airing tomorrow evening, let him know. Stu, I'd say you could catch up on previous episodes, but I feel like you've seen most of them. So, I'll think of some good things, dude. We'll definitely think of some good things. For any
go watch go binge Buffy.
There you go. Go binge Buffy. You may come back and hate Steve after that one, but
how can you hate me? No way, dude.
I don't know. It could.
Buffy's
I feel like
amazing.
People either love it or hate it. You know.
If you hate it, you're weird. Seduce a koala.
That might get dangerous.
Yeah, that's weird.
Oh my god.
Weirder than Buffy. That's for sure.
Well, the first suggestion was, there we go, wrestle a koala. I think that's probably a little safer, maybe a little less painful. I don't know, but I'd say avoid the koalas unless they're at the zoo.
I think, I don't know if Alex can hear us. Alex, can you hear us?
I think he took his headset off.
Oh, okay. Still sounds better than Buddy. Oh, yeah. That's funny. I think it's great that Alex had a deck as a kid that's a bridge-sized deck.
Dude. Well, now with the mini decks, I feel like a lot of kids, you just use a mini deck and you're good to go, but that's too funny.
But would you use a mini deck even as a kid, or would you use a bridge-sized deck? Mini decks are kind of, I mean, maybe when you're like 3 or 4, you'd use a mini deck.
Man. Yeah, I think it really depends on
But I think when you get older, it'd be too small.
Depends who you are.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Chin.
I'm back.
Oh, man.
So I think, to go off of your Mercedes comment is, I think another thing that these marketing companies do, and which obviously is smart, is they have to keep whatever it is they're marketing relevant, right? It's kind of like why musicians kind of do EPs or drop a song every other month or every month or something like that. It's to kind of keep it nowadays, to keep you relevant still, because people forget, because things are going by so fast, So if you're not coming out with things as often, people just kind of, you get lost in the algorithm, and then you have to regain that momentum. And, so that's why people are kind of continuously doing ads, even if they're not selling anything, right?
Yeah, so that was the old mentality, and that was a very valid business model. What I was going to get to before I grabbed the water is there was another study that came out that was about peak attention theory, which I'm pretty fascinated about. And essentially, it's the fact that when content was introduced, and we have like this idea of like content creators, and we have all this new stuff coming in, we would just add to it and add to it and add to it. And we just so all our free time starts to disappear, obviously, with the addition of this content, then our free time disappears. But then you essentially reach a critical threshold in which priorities are being made, in which obviously you have to eat, you have to sleep, and all these other, you have your job. And sometimes maybe you'll bleed into you check Facebook or whatever at work. But really what's happening is that once you reach that critical threshold, that's sort of when real market values occur, in which we begin to see actual prioritization of content. Because we're now at the point where we have so much content out there, and this is actually a reflection that the algorithms are now beginning to to reward is that now there are enough people that can grab my attention, and only the best are going to make it into my window of viewing time. And so that competition towards that viewing window is more intense than it used to be, and one in which before you would have people that would subscribe and behave with you, and now if you're not bringing the best, they're willing to drop you because there is a zero-sum game. I only have 10 plates. Let's make sure they all taste good. So
you know what I do? The cool thing about social media is, you know how because I think in any community you kind of have to follow some people out of kind of the community. If you don't, you're kind of a douche, right? even though you don't want to follow that person, we all have them. We all know who they are, you know. And it's like we follow them, but the cool thing about it is you can just mute their stories and mute their account, so you don't see anything by them. So you don't even have to taste the dish. It's kind of like that 11th plate that's kind of like on the kitchen counter that you don't even have to touch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. But that, like, even that shows sort of some of the problems of like just like signaling, or like social signaling of like, oh yeah, like I am following this person, but in reality I don't want to be following this person. It's just like there's a lot of strutting. Like I feel like a bird, and I'm just like, look at my feathers. And it's like I like, if I'm gonna be really honest, I'm not a big social media person, and so doing all this like P52 like rollout to get it bigger, it does make me a little uncomfortable. I know how to do it. It's just
you don't like to do it. Yeah.
I don't like doing it either, bro. Yeah, I don't either.
Well, no, I mean, I'm guessing you've seen The Social Dilemma.
I've seen parts of it. Yeah, I haven't seen it all, but it's on my to watch list.
So, and I think anyone, you know, I think you probably already know a lot of the premise behind it, and like a lot of you probably read some of the studies that it relied on to kind of generate this idea. But I think, you know, again, knowing how to do social media and the willingness to do it by willingly getting involved in it with the intention of growing, which is almost a necessity for a brand now. I agree with you. It almost feels a little bit like I don't want to say like you're selling your soul, but like you're playing into the things that you know are not necessarily in the best interest of everyone who's using the platform, you know, and really it's the only way to get ahead, and that's the problem with it, I guess.
Yeah, so what you're describing is I know there's a term for it. I don't know the scientific term, but in Hollywood it's called sucking dick. Like basically, like it's like no,
so
but
good.
like, but it's no, there is an actual term for it. I just didn't know.
I mean, I'm sure that it's fine.
It's essentially the idea of having to participate to play the game.
Yeah.
To me, I thought about it a lot, and it is an easier way to make this happen. There are ways around it, and one of it is capital, and then you can make your own game. I think one of the ones that one of my heroes is the guy that made Wikipedia. And so he was like, yeah, like Facebook, like screw that noise. And he literally made a social networking site that you have to pay to enroll. But then you don't get any of the extra stuff, and it's just quality content. And obviously that has problems with network effects of like who's going to go. But I think like you deal with your standard early adopters, and then you get your like middle curve, and then either you're just going to get your late adopters or you're not. But it's very interesting because I think the people that are willing to play that game are people that don't have other choices. And then that starts to get into like things like privilege and all that. And we don't have to talk about that. But it's I think if
what do we know about privilege? White dudes here, come on. We're not privileged. I'm kidding. Everybody, I'm kidding.
And this was the last show they ever.
I know, right? Please don't cancel us.
It's all right. We can always just
you can't
swap
really
out
cancel a show that's already canceled.
yeah. We do this for free. So
Try and cancel us. We only get worse.
oh my god.
Yeah, no, I mean that's true. It's definitely true. It's
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much involved. There's so many ins and outs of the social aspect of it, where it works and where it totally doesn't work. And that's why you have these things like TikTok come up and these other little. There's never one program that does everything. I mean, one app that does everything, right? There's never one camera that does everything. They kind of give it to you in little pieces. So they're creating the next best thing, but they're never giving you the one package that can fulfill all your needs. You know what I mean?
So I would argue against that sort of like I think in you as an American, yes, that's true, and that's mostly because of our privacy laws and like Facebook and Apple and Google be like, hey, like we don't share data with each other. But China, like that is very real. Like like all the stuff that we're starting to see now, like they've had for so long. Like China, they're like, oh yeah, like I'm checking my phone with was it WeChat? I feel
WeChat,
yeah. And I'm paying for my pizza with WeChat, and everything is under that one app. Literally, they like she does payroll from her WeChat app.
Wow.
And that's because centralized government.
I mean, that point is real scary to me. I don't want it to get to that point. I just want it to get to the point where an app like a social media app, such as paying payroll is not social media, where that's a little bit of information that I don't want kind of involved in social media. But like you have your TikTok, you have your Instagram, you have your Facebook, you have your whatever. I don't even know. I'm not kind of in tune with the whole social media side of it than what I have to be. But and once one platform comes out like TikTok, then you have Instagram that kind of chimes in and has Reels now. So that's
adoption creep, right?
For sure.
But that's feature matching, and so like Instagram, like I think when Snapchat went public and they did their IPO by that point in time, Instagram, which just got acquired by Facebook, was like, oh shit, like we gotta, and so they just like boom, and now we have stories now too. I think that's not the issue. I think the issue with TikTok was mostly specifically because it was built specifically for the reason of funneling data from out of territory. Since
for sure.
Like it's like those like hey, what do I look like when I'm old? They're actually just collecting your face so they can So
I mean, you can see it. Everybody can see it. I'll be in the other room talking to my girlfriend about butter knives. And all of a sudden I'll go on my phone and I'll see an ad on Instagram for butter knives, and I'm like, I just don't understand. And it'll be the most random thing. Like, my girlfriend's name's Leslie, so Leslie will say, we need a green blanket for our bed. I don't know. And then all of a sudden I'll get a stupid ad for a green blanket or something. And it's just scary things that are happening.
I think the basis of all that tracking is just they have that centralized platform in which they can have connecting marketplaces. Because if you can't connect, the whole point is if you can't actually be big enough to reach that critical threshold to connect people, your service is invalid. And I don't care if I know that you want a green blanket if I can't connect you with someone that has a green blanket. And so that's sort of the reason why people like in all Silicon Valley are willing to throw money at it, because they know that there's a huge gap that they have to jump over. And so like when Uber is saying Like, yeah, we lost $20 billion last year, and everyone's still throwing money at it. Like for us, it's like, oh my gosh, but for them,
yeah, that's the cost to play, like you said.
yeah.
So is that what the goal of P52 is, my friend? Is to centralize all this information? So you guys heard it here first. P52 is just trying to get all your information and collections, and I'm sure he's collecting your addresses. So he's missing a deck. He could just go steal it from your house.
There you go.
So no, it actually is meant to try to do that recommendation thing. I don't know how to do that stuff yet. Actually, there was an app that I wanted to do, and everyone always asks, like, when is this becoming an app? And it's like, it's just so expensive. Like, so expensive. Like you're ready to put 50 grand down on the table, and they're like, no, we need 70 just for the Apple version. And that's not even dealing with all the variations of Android. But it's like, it's so crazy how expensive this stuff. But like, if I do get it down and connected, I would do a bare bones version, in which is essentially like Tinder for cards. Oh, cool. And so the whole idea is that it's connected to your account, and then when you see an image, you like it or you don't like it. And it's sort of up to me to write something well enough, or at least teach someone to code it, because I don't code, well enough so that it'll recognize, based on whatever things are in it, what you're actually looking for. And that sort of brings it back all the way to when we were earlier talking about sort of bypassing that initial hazing phase of collecting, of like, hey, I'm just going to buy 100 different decks without really knowing what I like. And it's through this recommendation and through this ability to be like, hey, yo, like, you know, if you're liking this and not this, we just saved you like $5,000 because instead of buying it, you just swiped right or left. And it's something that's simple that I'm hoping to put in. But yeah, I mean, like, in a sense, like it is essentially fine tuning and personalizing experiences. Like, that is very much what P52 is hoping to do.
That's cool. And you know,
we're not going to be like corporate people. Like, it's literally just me and like Pipchick just joined the team, so that's pretty cool. But,
yeah, that's dangerous. That'll make it. Yeah, be careful of that one.
So, and actually,
we love that.
The idea of the cost behind an app, though, actually raises a good question that I had earlier that slipped my mind. When you first started P52, how much of a kind of like shock was it to you, the cost behind starting something that actually required a database in the back end and all this information, and the amount of time and energy it took to build a site that was more than just like your point and click Wix style website?
Yeah, so it was very much I think the big thing is I didn't have as big a background in certain things of how the coding world was. And so initially it was Drupal. And then when I realized what I needed it to be, we had to migrate to Laravel. And after the full build, we had to rebuild on a whole different set. And that was really expensive. I think the hosting isn't that bad. It's like $300 a month. It's expensive, but it's like nothing crazy. It will go higher once we start the card genome project, which I'm hoping to launch next year, nice. Depending on how we get the site going. But it's essentially promoting people to scan every card. So then instead of having to open a deck, then you could just browse decks, which I think is a big ask of a lot of people. But the big costs is really the builds. And everyone's like, why are you building this? Why are you building that? And if you're going American, it's about $150 an hour. And so if your build costs this, like, oh, let's fix this bug, is like 6 hours of work, that's a pretty hefty chunk of change. And so a lot of my anxiety occurs when I can't fix something. And it's not because I can't, or it's because I can't do it. So like this whole experience of P52, like I knew where the market was going. It's like I have to be in it, but also it's like I'm reading a manual on how to build a car, and to build a car, and then I'm offering rides to people. But
Yeah.
like, if it breaks down, who are people gonna blame? If they're gonna blame me, I'm doing like right now. This is still all out of pocket. Like everything now, even seasons, like the new seasons Kickstarter. It's that money's going to P52. Like that's like it's all in on that now. So.
No, and I think even like you said, even a couple $100 a month for hosting fees, like I think that's so much more than people expect these days, especially seeing all this advertising from GoDaddy and all these other brands being like, oh, host your website for only $4.99 a month. And it's like, yeah, like I don't think a lot of people having gone through the process of actually building a web application realize that $4.99 hosting isn't getting you very far. Like you need to go above and beyond that. And really, like you said, a lot of it's the time. And at the same time, too, if you had a flat multi-page site but without the database behind you, your hosting would be a lot less as well. Database storage gets pricey because you need space, and then paying for people. Yeah, it's an adventure, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm hoping I could just like set up something long term. I think the biggest thing is just like a lot of the hesitation and growth, and just me being able to test. It's just not having a coder on my side. But I don't know. I saved up enough money now where I can throw it at the wall and see how far we can get until money dries up again. Yeah. But it was an uphill battle in the beginning because I sort of went out of pocket a little too much, and then I was just like, oh no, this is not a scenario I wanted to be in.
But it worked. It worked for you, which is good.
Yeah, it worked. So I mean, and we were talking about this in our previous call, but like the site has had a long-term vision from day one, and being able to implement that vision has been the harder jump. Yeah. But like so the XP points, and that like there's always been that fourth collection of like, what does this collection mean? How do I unlock it? And it's like there's always been this idea that we would promote and make the experience of collecting fun and volunteering for the community fun through these points. And so based on how much you give back to the community, hey, you get extra lists. Hey, you get extra space in your collection to collect more. I don't know how I'm going to do that now that people like Jason have like 1,500 decks on there, of their bicycle decks. And it's just like, oh, I'm not going to take that away from you. But also like the whole idea would have been nice if out the get-go, we established that culture of like, if you want more than 500 decks, just do some volunteer work, fill out these missing fields. What are tags here? And so one of the things that I've been working on, not so much lately, but I'm hoping to get back into establishing before the end of the year is establishing customer journeys and user journeys in which you can be a photographer. And so if you're doing photography, then all the photos that you put up will be under the deck page of that kind of deck. And so you can see it if you have the really professional photographers, like to be frank, he's awesome, so good. But his stuff, like you see those nice pictures and you see the marketing materials from the actual company, but then you also get to see people that actually own the deck, and they're just like, boop, and this is my camera phone. And then you sort of get to see all angles of this piece, and it's like, all right, now do you still want it? Like, and if you do, then you have a more confident position to like make that purchase. And again, at the very end, P52 is about navigating and helping you figure out your collecting identity. Other ones can be like improving the images on the site. So like there's a lot of cellophane sometimes, like maybe we'll have like, if you can do a better scan, like we'll reward you with points with that. Or a big one I think is going to happen that I don't think anyone's really thought about is vintage decks. And so once we start doing singles, the idea of introducing vintage singles and not having every single card, the people that are able to Photoshop those cards to sort of fill in the gaps, I think that's going to be a really interesting way to have restorative heritage to a lot of these cards that might not have otherwise gotten that kind of attention.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, these are the things I think about. So
that's awesome. I mean, kind of just bring it to the next level, you know.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I mean, I think it'll be great to have, you know, I like the fact that, I mean, obviously being a photographer, you want the most beautiful pictures, you know, you want the stuff that, you don't want black and white images of pretty decks, or, you know, like you want stuff that's usable rather than, and of course everybody is using their catalog for their own reason, you know, as of right now, I think, but, you know, I think what it comes down to is trying to enlighten, or you know, just what's the word I'm looking for? Is just integrate more of that stuff into the community rather than just for your own catalog. It's more of like a community catalog, you know, where
creating that engagement has really been a challenge.
Right.
And I think there's also like a wait for it, hold now kind of mentality. Because if you don't have the critical threshold, or have like a reasonable way to view it, you're just sort of going to be standing in the dust, because there's a lot of the stuff is network effects, and if you don't have the runway, or just like initial attraction, it's really like, oh, well, this forum is a dead playground. Like, there's nothing here. And then that discourages you, even though you were willing to participate. So there's a lot of like extra level thought that goes into designing and rolling out these kind of things that people don't necessarily think about. And so if you want to like put your best foot forward, just have to like make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's. So
yeah. Hopefully, you know, kind of have. I mean, is it something that you have like mandatory fields where, you know, people are making sure that they're putting in all the information that is needed, or?
Yeah, that's like. So, all right, here's one we can just riff on. One of the things that I never really thought about that we really need to handle is variation. So variation in decks, I'm thinking about collapsing them into one SKU, and then when you open that, then you can see the variations below it. Because things
kind
like
of like in a store, so to speak.
Yeah. Like,
if you go into a Jerry's Nuggets deck, you go into it, there's the main deck, and then under it you could see yellow, blue, green, orange, purple, gray, black. I was just going through all the colors.
Yeah. No, Roy G.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's I think not even just colors, which made sense to me, but like this is a big one, mostly because I didn't know about it because I don't do a lot of bicycle anymore. I started as a bicycle collector, and I brought my way out of that. But well, no. So it's interesting because I think the irony is I started collecting. I actually never finished that story from earlier.
Yeah,
the Black Tiger. You collect them. I bought a brick of them. It was great. I bought it from a guy that used to have chewing tobacco in the middle of high school, and he introduced me to it. But whatever.
It's better cards than tobacco, right?
But yeah, I got into that, and then the irony was that I collected a lot from eBay because that's just the only place I knew for where I could get decks in high school, and they were all bicycle branded, and I was like, oh, cool. But what broke me out of that was actually the Viper deck that Illusionists had, Talios. Mm-hmm. And so once that happened, there's a lot of behavior that like is sort of unknowingly like underplayed that actually has a lot of value. And just by me accepting that it doesn't have to be bicycle branded changed like a whole trajectory of cumulative actions that compound over time. That I was like, oh, well, in that case, we can actually do different things. And so that's when I started actually like making my own cards. And yeah, I mean, from there it was just like luckily, I don't know if we touched upon this earlier. Essentially, it was at the end of college, and I was like, I had this 3-month gap before I had to like move out of my like college like flat, and it's like, okay, I don't know, like architecture wasn't great at the time for getting jobs. I know my fiance, she got a job and she was getting like $25,000 a year. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Bad. I mean, now we're all happy and we have a lot of don't cry for us. But the time I was just like, okay, well, we just can't do this. So I had a bucket list of the things I wanted to do. And so one of them was like photo reading, and photo reading is like this magical thing. It's like you open a book and then you just memorize it. Boom, 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 boom. And it's just like, I still never got that down. Another one was just like I was getting really into like package design. And so there was this one shop like that was closing down. It was in the college strip. It was really popular. And I contacted them, and it didn't sound that expensive. I was like, per month, I think we could do this. I don't have any background in business or anything like that. It's like we could probably do this. And this is like sort of this is a college idea. I stand by it, knowing now what I know about opening storefronts. I probably wouldn't have done it, but like I think that the idea and the demographic and the matching of that is sound. So it's called the THC Lounge, and this is pre-legal weed, and it was a lounge, and it essentially established sort of like that coffee shop feeling. It's a third place, so it's not your work / study. It's not your bedroom, and it's a third place for you to sort of hang out / be productive. But it served tea, served hookah, and it served coffee, and so it had the leverage of being like, oh, what's up? But we're still being legal. We're still being legal, and I think for a college town that would have been fun. And that leaned into me developing my first business, which was Mood Garden, which is a tea company. It was originally going to be tea and coffee, and then the marketplace for coffee was just really rough. And so I made this like tea packaging. And we were like gonna source some teas, and I like submitted the tea packaging to like different design blogs and all that, and like it got picked up, and I started getting a lot of traction. And so it was like, oh, like I think we're gonna do this, and then we did our Kickstarter, and it did not go well at all. Like yeah. And which is really interesting because I haven't thought about this in so long, but like that's been a
sorry to bring up these bad bad memories.
No, so but like
we bring out the best on Deckin Around.
No, it's an interesting thing because like now like Kickstarter I sort of take for granted like it's gonna go well, that's fine. But then it was just like it was not a great. It didn't fund basically, and so but like the packaging, I got a lot of feedback, and so the whole idea is that each flavor was based on a different mood, and so you're building your mood garden, and then like it's a tea stick, and it has 5 different bags in it, and as you pull it out, you can take one for every day of the week, and as you're pulling it out, the flower grows over time because you're like growing it. And so it becomes a bookmark because like tea readers also read books. So it's like, oh, this is cool. But that sort of got me into package design, which brought me into me doing the card thing. And the card thing, ironically, I pitched to Illusionists, and I pitched to Theory 11, and I made a video. And I did 2 different videos with both of their logos on the bottom of the box of like just super subtle of like, can you envision this deck in your future? Pay me money. And
I love it.
And I'm not gonna lie, like Illusionists, they did not respond. But Theory 11, no. Oh, all right. So they actually wrap around the story. That's actually pretty good. We'll get to that. So the Theory 11, they actually responded and they're like, yeah, this looks great. We'll get back to you. And they never did. And so roll down the road, like 3-4 months, give or take 5-6 months. I don't know. Basically, I actually find I'm like, okay, let's sort of try to do this. And I'm like posting, and I think I posted in UC, and Jay found me, who he was an eBay seller at the time, and he liked cards, and he also had a son who I think just sort of had trouble with a few things, and he's just like, okay, like he had his own business, and I think he was sort of picturing this becoming his own business, like his son's own business with me. So he funded my first deck, and that was sort of like I did all the work. He just sort of like put money in it, and it was just like we sold really well. And I think when that first happened, that's when I started getting on like Illusionists' radar, and that's when we started talking. And so originally we were going to have an Illusionist deck, and then the Illusionist deck for Seasons. I don't really know what happened, to be perfectly honest, but that deal fell through. And
big mistake on that part.
It's Illusionist has some people. I don't know. I'm not gonna touch that at all. They have people, and they
have people.
They have people. That's the tagline. Illusionists, they have people. No, it's I think they're just it just didn't work out for whatever reasons. Fun fact though, I was at the time and that early on talking about like thermochromic stuff, and I think because of that they introduced this really fun like gimmick. I think it's like sort of like a twisted angel kind of thing where you put the angel in and then you move it to the side and then you take a lighter and you like make one disappear from one end. But I feel like they like leveraged that because I had it signed like I can't use thermochromic ink for X amount of years. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, it was sad because I couldn't even like make the cards with them even though after that. But anyways, after that failed, and I was just like, okay, like I guess I got to do my own thing. And fast forward to now.
So weird. So weird. I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even gonna say I think of anything on it, but it's interesting the things that people decide to pick up and not pick up, you know. And I think obviously Illusionist has their style, right? Yeah. And love it or hate it, it's their style, you know. And
yeah, it's interesting because they were who they were, and I think it was fine. It was just like a very cool kid magic. I mean, Brad basically built that from like infomercials of ACR routines, and it was pretty insane. And then Theory 11 broke off of that. And once they started scaling, I think they decided to redirect their marketing in a way that leaned into, I think they started going, it's a little odd. I didn't expect it. I think they were going for scale with low intro to barrier. And so that's when you started seeing like the rocket designs, like really like obstacle style, like carnival stuff. And they were doing the Kickstarter with the widgets. And they were just sort of like exploring that like low barrier to entry. And I think that sort of died, and that's why their new campaign, they rolled back to their previous branding position. But I'm not sure if that's exactly what they were going for, but it sounds like.
Yeah, who knows, right? Who knows what they're going for and what their intentions are?
I mean, either way, they're clearly doing well because I'm a one-person team, and they're huge.
So just to loop back real quick, also, I found your Behance page with your mood garden, and I gotta say that the work is dope, man. I like the bookmarks. Like, I dig this. I dig this for sure. Like,
dude, you gotta throw that shit in the chat. Throw it in the private chat so I can look at it.
I'll throw it in the private chat, but I'll also, as long as Alex is okay with it, I'll drop in the comments below as well for anyone else who's interested to see where all this design inspiration started from.
I mean, yeah, you can. That's fine,
dude. Yeah, no, cool. I think it's really like I love the floral kind of motif to the whole thing. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's so like the whole gimmick of oh hey, like sell a flavor based on the mood. Have you guys watched BoJack Horseman?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a joke in there, and I was just like, what if we sold smoothies based on your mood? It's called smoothies, and it's just like. Oh, fuck, that's my exact business model for tea. But like literally that design, I have very real confidence. It was after that design that everyone started to in the beverage world started to market based on moods.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, clearly proof of concept, great. Execution is always something I always hesitate on.
Yeah, it's all about timing, right? And how you put it out there, you know?
Yeah, having that experience to make it roll out.
Yeah, and sometimes these big companies see an idea and they run with it, and they just have the marketability to do it, right? Where we don't have that reach and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You know, it is the way it is. Yeah, no, that's dope. I love how colorful it is, and you know, it's kind of cool because you can see all. You know, your experience in packaging and love for packaging in your decks. You know, it's you know, my first introduction to your stuff was the apothecary sets, you know, and I remember looking at it, I'm like, oh, this looks like a bar of soap. So cool. And so refreshing to look at, and you know, I just wanted to smell it and it to, you know, smell like something, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it was super cool, and you know, I think you crushed it, and I think that's the one thing that I look forward to. You know, whenever, you know, I know October's coming around, I'm like, what's the packaging gonna be like? Because we know it's gonna be different. It's gonna be out of the box. It's not gonna be like something like this. You know what I mean? Where you're like, I'm covering up the name so nobody knows what deck it is. That way nobody feels bad about me covering up a box saying it's not like this. You know what I mean? So it's like creative and you know, I dig that. So it's always fun to not to know what to expect and look forward to the first image that gets put out, you know?
Yeah. I think pushing boundaries just to push boundaries. I'm starting to slow down on that. I think for me, it's more, what am I getting excited for? And usually it does involve a new technology, but it's just like, how do I best roll that out?
Yeah.
And so like the new sushi deck is a perfect example of that. So it's itnakimasu, which is like, you know, picture eating food, and I like sort of picture this being beyond sushi. But the idea of the deck was that so you have your sushi decks, and like it's just like a fun little gift. You have your rice patty, and then you have your salmon patty, and then you wrap it with like a nice little California sushi piece, and it's like a presentable gift. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And I think I just would have stopped at that. But I've been sitting on this idea for an embarrassing long time. And so over
how long?
It's at least like 3 to 4 years now.
Nice.
And it's mostly because didn't see anything really remarkable about it. But a few things happened sort of like percolating around it. One of them was why is this sushi deck so big? And how can I eat such a big piece? And so my first thing was that, okay, well, maybe in the Kickstarter video, we have a restaurant. It's called Big Mouth Sushi. And that's what justifies the size of this giant piece of sushi. And then it rolled around of like, well, who makes a sushi piece this big? And it's like, well, probably a person with a big mouth, because that's his restaurant, Big Mouth. And so I just pictured, I don't know if you saw the movie Frank. He's this weird guy that like picks sounds from everywhere, but he has a giant head. And I was like, oh, well, he would be the guy. He would be the guy that makes this giant sushi. And then I was just like, well, that's creepy as all hell. So well, how do we make this like good? And it's just like, okay, well, you know, like what's approachable? And it's like, oh, actually, you know what? If it's perfectly, it's a cat. Cats love fish, and internet loves cats. And it's like, so
I don't.
I am a dog person. I want to talk to the dog over here, but and the idea is to create this character then, and I don't know his name yet, but he's the sushi chef of this restaurant that makes the sushi for you. And so for me, that was cool. But then I was like sitting on it still, and I'm like, there's something missing. And so I think when I'm gonna roll this out, what it's actually gonna be isn't the sushi deck, it's a sushi cooking class. And so the idea is that like some of the things I have to drop, they're just not gonna happen. Some things I think I can get to work, but it's like, okay, we have this piece of salmon. Well, you're gonna have to fillet it, and when you fillet the skin off, that's your limited edition card, and that's what shows your number. And then we have the one thing that didn't work was an egg. I tried to make an eggshell out of wax, and it just got a little too messy, and it just like wasn't gonna work. So I did like cracking it. But then there's like,
you gotta stop filming this stuff so you can like just put it up like behind the scenes.
Here's some true Jackson Robinson thinking right there. Just make a mini deck.
Yeah, so that was going to be for the sequel. I already thought of that, Jackson. Come on.
Jackson, you're late on this one, buddy.
No. So the idea is that in theory, if this one goes well, and you have to really focus on establishing the meaning out the gate, and then you can get a little lazier in that. It's the mini decks would be if I'm doing the sushi deck early enough, which I gotta. I've been sitting on this for so long. It would be in time for Christmas, like the 12 Days of Christmas next year. And each of the decks would be sort of like individually handmade. And so I think introducing that niche, because I've been hesitating a lot about. There are certain types of cards that interest me now. Mini decks and flipbook decks. And I think there's not enough established meaning. And idea would be to probably launch one mini deck in the first campaign, let it mature, and then launch it at the end of the year. Because I think if I do one mini deck, other people will do a few. And by that point in time, then when people are ripe, then I can like.
So it's like a shrinky deck instead of a shrinky dink when it like they shrink. It grows.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the sushi deck, and that's just sort of an example of how it evolved from me not being happy with what it could be or what it was to what it could be. And I think at this point I am happy with it, and it's just more me balancing P52 stuff with actual season stuff.
Just hand that all over to Pip, let her do it, and then you can.
I mean, that's the goal. That's honestly the goal. I need to free up. I think delegation is really something I struggle with, mostly because I don't have the experience in doing so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hold on one second. So all of a sudden, I just realized that the volume dropped off very much, and I'm wondering.
It's fine now. It's back. It's back now. Yep.
Oh, from me?
Yeah, we're
it's
good.
back.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know what did it though.
Yeah. It dropped off for a second, but it came back.
Excuse the technical difficulties.
I've never been so happy to see a cat.
I've never. Dude, that was yeah, no, that was I'm excited for the sushi deck. I think, like you said, there's been a lot of ideation on it and a lot of time that you've been sitting on it. But at the same time, too, if you had rushed it and put it out a year into thinking about it, who knows if the market would have been even ready for the idea of the sushi deck at the time,
Yeah, so I think that's a big difference in camps of how people treat it and how people treat ideation. And I think there is a balance. I think, could I push faster? I think I actually should. I think there is also like an oversaturation because I think there's a lot of, I'm holding on to idea too long and it becomes selfish and I'm not generous with that idea and sort of pursuing other ideas. You'll see people that sort of like really go crazy and just launch something all willy-nilly with, and they could do better. But then there's also things like, all right, one a year is just, let's be real. I'm called seasons. I should be doing one every 4, like once a season. Like really what I should, I think for me, I know my balance, and for me, I think 4 decks a year is probably a okay pace.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's figuring out where you lie on that. I see too many people. Oh shit.
Look at that froze. That froze screen. Definitely not as good as my freeze screen. Is that another battery fail?
Yeah, I got a battery.
Dang, dude, you're burning through those batteries.
This is why the AC adapters are a must.
Continuous battery life.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's I think sharing ideas and hiding behind the wall of perfection is something that people get held up about. And honestly, for me, it's not about that anymore. I think I'm over that. It's more just being organized enough to implement fast enough.
Right.
So
yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely people that you can share with that wouldn't like steal your stuff. I think we all have those people that have our best interest, in mind, and that's something.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. I don't mean like sharing and having people steal it. It's just like sharing with the community. Like, you've been holding on to this deck. If you call it artist, it is your onus to give it to them.
Right.
And so I don't know. It's I think sometimes there are ideas that do need to mature, and I think I read this one thing of like, how do you know when an idea is ready? And it's like, well, is it acceptable in that it reaches all the minimum conditions? Yeah. And then just give it a little bit more time after that. And after that, like, you have to share it. And if you're not sharing it, it's because you're hiding behind this idea of like, oh, I'm going to make the perfect novel. And it's like, well, I think, are you though? Or are you just
you gotta make a novel before it could be the perfect one?
Yeah, like, are you just calling yourself a writer and just like you're living behind that label kind of thing? So
yeah, no, hey, that's for sure.
But yeah, I don't know.
Oh, go.
And so, no, I was going to say, to kind of loop back around to an earlier topic we talked about too, your love of bicycle decks as you start to collecting. And I feel like this is probably to somewhat an inside joke between you and Jason. But Jason asked here, Alex Chin, when are you doing a bicycle deck?
So I showed him this image. I was going to do my first Kickstarter was going to have a bicycle branded version of the Seasons decks. And it never made it out. This really wonky typography. And
it'd be perfect for a bicycle deck then.
Yeah, no, it's a. I think I would have to open up that conversation with like Tiffany and all them again and see what the rates are and see if it's worth it. I think it's really on brand for people like Jackson and on brand for people that are starting out that need some leverage into the world and to get some traction, and you can sort of piggyback off that name. For me, it's I don't know. I don't know if like I will do one. Like I think at this point it's a bucket list, right? It's like
There you go.
let's let like and I like working with them enough.
Jackson says it's $1.44 for the bicycle logo per deck.
That's not too bad. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I think I don't have enough clout with Jason's group. Maybe I'll go in with the bicycle collectors group and be like, "Yo, hey, you remember me?" And then maybe it'll be worth it if I roll something out. I think when I think bicycle, I think America. I think older vintage designs. And when I think about my designs, they're decently pattern heavy, usually elegant, skew a little bit more Eastern. Typography is very, very minimal in general. And so I think that sort of clashes with a giant trademark on the front. That being said, it's sort of a nice challenge. And when you put it forward, it's like, oh, all right, if I'm doing a bicycle deck and I have this constraint, what can I do with it? One of the interesting ones I sort of liked in terms of bicycle was just the bicycle logo on front and bottom is just mirrored, and that's all it was.
Insignia did that.
Yeah. I like that
Brent Braun for the Insignia back.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
it was a really fun play on that. I think if I was allowed to mess with the trademark, I would be way more excited. Playing with that typography and leaning into that would be a different story.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's it's one I get asked a lot, mostly by Jason. But it's yeah.
Jackson said you don't have to have clout with Jason's group. Just sling the logo on there.
See, and this is something Steve and I have talked about, though, too, in the past, is the fact that you go look on Kickstarter and very rarely will you see a bicycle deck not fund.
Yeah, but I think also at this point, I'm not necessarily putting a lot of clout behind the term funded and not funded now as well. Because
that's for damn freaking sure. That's for sure.
It's like I was even talking with the Kickstarter people, and they're just like they're putting in implementation to make sure that like, hey, like we're starting to like shut down people that use those trademarks, like funded in 1 minute, funded in 10 minutes, and in actuality they'll never do that because they want money. But
that's all they care about. Let's be honest.
But the answering of that into their cultural guidelines, it shows that they are recognizing that's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's why you have people who are designers that, and recently there's, we see it on there where they put a goal of $1,000. Just so it says 2,400% reached. And in 3 minutes, it's like, bro, you had like $1 goal. Of course, it's gonna.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I do that as well. Like, I put in production costs, bam, when we're set, and it's just like, all right, well, realistically, if I only got this, I would lose so much money on the tax, on the shipping, but like
$1,000 on a 1,000 deck run. Come on, let's be honest.
That's a little.
Look, especially like a 2 decks like campaign,
2 deck foiled campaign. Come
on.
There's definitely ones out there who just do it to, like you said, to get that kind of clout behind them on Kickstarter, and it's interesting. I don't know. Ultimately, I think if nothing else, and this is something we've discussed a lot about Kickstarter, is I think it presents a deceptive image about the the success of playing cards in a way that you get people who come in and create a deck with the ultimate goal of somehow getting rich off of playing cards. And you see these campaigns who reach 2,400% or they reach hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think there's a disconnect. And this probably happens over Kickstarter as a whole, but I don't get as involved in other Kickstarters as I do with cards, where I think people see that number and they're like, oh my God, they made $200,000. And it's like, yeah, like your gross profit off a Kickstarter was $200,000, but you have zero understanding of what the actual cost behind this is. So that $200,000 could literally be, hey, you made 10 grand. Not to say that that's not a lot of money. 10 grand to some people is a lot of money, but to say you made $200,000 and then you immediately spent 190 of it, like that's a different picture. And I think a lot of times when you do see those people who rely on the flashy funded this and that, I think maybe, and I don't think it's intentional, I think it's an unintended consequence of that is people then see this and they're like, I could get rich doing this. And it's like, that's not the case.
Yeah, so what you're describing is like the narrative of seeing that soundbite and wanting that soundbite for yourself of like, hey, I funded I remember the first time I was like so pumped. Like I got 6 figures on a Kickstarter. Like, oh, this is awesome. But like in reality, once you're going to nitty gritty, like, yeah, there are a lot of fee structures that you just don't anticipate and you just don't see all that like behind the scenes stuff that really the people that can navigate that stuff are the pros, and the people that don't sort of get burned and just don't do another Kickstarter. I know I was burned. I think Paul was as well back in the day in our first Kickstarters. It's just something you just don't think about. And this is early on before they had all these support groups for Kickstarters, in which, like, depending on how your business is set up, if you're inventory based or if you're like cash coming based, and like if you're accrual based, like if you get that 190,000, that's great. And then the next tax year, you're paying taxes for 190,000, despite the fact that you had to spend, or the 200,000, despite the fact that you had to spend the 190,000. And so even though you're netting a $10,000 gain, you're paying taxes on 190. And if you're, again, this is talking about privilege. It's like, if you have the ability to pay that, that's a lesson you can learn. That's fine. And if you don't, oh no, like then maybe you have to open up a loan just to pay that off or whatever. And there's just like a lot of like unexpected filters in the back end that like sort of like, oh, you're not making another Kickstarter after this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, Jackson said 60% of what he made from the OG Federal 52 went to taxes.
I believe that.
That's crazy.
That was pretty similar to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the one thing, I mean, you know, we Tyler and I have a group chat where, you know, with our friends, and we were just talking about, you know, Gentleman Weeks campaign. And when you look at the front end of it, you're like, oh my God, $175,000. That's a lot of money. But what people don't understand is that, but it might cost $100,000 just to create the decks. You know, we brought up the knock campaign, and you know, they're like, oh my God, 125,000. It's like, yeah, but I mean, it costs 90,000 to print 15,000 decks with foil and boxes shipped from Italy, and like, who knows? It might cost 100,000. Who knows? But like, people don't understand. Then you have to pay for shipping, and most people lose money on shipping through the campaign.
Shipping's a tough one. Yeah.
Well, and
Kickstarter takes 10%. And if you use BackerKit, they're going to take some percentage. And there's just so much involved. Taxes, nobody even thinks about taxes. You know, that comes out of you. So I mean, people don't understand. Although we look at it and it's like, oh my God, they're crushing it. They're making 175,000. Yeah, but how much are they taking home? You know, it might be $20,000, which is great, but the work that goes into that is, you know, it's like,
it's one of my favorite like tidbits. I saw this guy who's talking about like what wealth is, and wealth and being rich is when your burn rate is less than your gain rate. And he's like, I have like these people in New York, but they're like burning through because they're they have the alimony and their like mortgage, and they're making $2.5 million a year, but they're feeling the pain because obviously they're on the wrong side of that fence. And so as long as you're gaining more than you're losing, in general, obviously, like if you're not talking about leverage and stuff like that, that's usually where you want to be. And so really the number that we're seeing on a Kickstarter isn't what you want to see. The number you want to see is usually the percentage behind the average gross tier.
Yeah.
But because like, and then there could be variables that just like skew everything. I had my cousin actually got into a Kickstarter. He does board games. After
big money there.
Yeah, no, he hit it big. I tried to work with him. He actually did the crypt campaign, so you can actually see the apothecary cards in the carpets of it. But he did another one called Canvas. He's talking to me, and it's like, I want to do stuff with clear cards on top of other clear cards. It's like, oh yeah, like I think about in that sort of mental model all the time, because we have these other artists that do these like intricates, and so I was like talking him through it, and he does a campaign. I think it's going to do well. I think it'll be probably like a $250,000 campaign, which will be good. But then COVID hit, and then everyone started pulling back of their projects. But the people that didn't have anything to do doubled down on the internet. So in that very specific 90-day window of like prime time of like COVID being new, I was analyzing it, and every single project there was really, because they had less competition on the marketplace of the Kickstarter, but had more of a deeper pool of people that were using Kickstarter. They were grossing about 200% more than I personally would evaluate them to be should.
Wow.
So he pulled like 750 off of that campaign. It was pretty crazy.
Wow. That's insane.
But like when you see stuff like that, I can imagine a lot of people being like, oh, I'm going to do that. And it's just like, well, you're not really thinking about the market conditions. And even if you're thinking at a 250 mark, you're not really thinking about your distribution. Board games have a little bit more of a relenting business structure and like shipping and all that, because it's like the damage isn't a big deal for them versus like, all right, if you're buying this $30 deck and I ship it to you and it's damaged, like you probably still keep it and I have to ship you another one, and it's just like, all right, that's out the window versus a board game. Like it's about the functionality versus
yeah. I mean, that's just most of the time. Let's be honest. Most of the time that stuff gets damaged is because it wasn't packaged properly, and we all know that you package your stuff damn good, But you have these like fulfillment companies. I won't name any names, but like fulfillment companies that are putting decks in like a bubble mailer with like $100 deck, literally $100 deck in a bubble mailer.
Yeah.
And that's like,
it's well, because they're used to like, I think understanding the culture is a big one, right? Like I talked to a lot of fulfillment companies, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is, to be fair, that is the cheapest way to get something from A to Z.
Totally.
They don't think about that condition being a factor, and once you do that, then that changes up the entire way you think about shipping this thing. And so for cards, this horror story, I bought this one signed. I told you this. I like SignDucks, and so I'm not a huge Ramsey fan. I did like his V3s a lot, like the Palm ones. I actually do them. Nice. Use them for like every day. But I was like, you know what? I'll splurge a little bit. It's the first one that had foil with United States Playing Card Company, and to me, that's sort of like historical chronology. It's sort of how I create memories or like chronology into my collection. And so for that sort of made sense to me. And it's like, okay, I got that. He sent it from Croatia to the US in a bubble mailer. It had a felt on the inside, and it was damaged in the corner. and I was just like, yo, this what's with this? And he's just like, yeah, I don't know, I'm so sorry. And I was just like he was selling it because he needed money. I was just like, I'm not going to pursue this, but it's just like,
that's the word.
I don't know.
It's crazy. I mean, I've run into, interesting situations with sellers and how they ship and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, depending on who you are, if you're someone like Theory 11 who pays $1.10 for their decks or whatever they pay for them, and it's not really a big deal. They're not going to package them as well as they have to because replacing them, they have some of the best customer service in the industry by far, but it's because, when they're sending them, most of them are in great condition. They make it great, whether it's luck or whatever, but it doesn't cost them anything. It's cheaper for them to just send new decks than to pay for expensive shipping, because the amount of decks that people are buying in the collector's world are probably smaller than the fans that are Star Wars fanatics that bought probably 100 times more than the collectors bought. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, they're not going to return it because they don't care. They just want a Star Wars deck, So, the 700 to 1,000, which I highly doubt it's that many. Who knows how many? It could be 50. But the amount that they have to replace is like nothing compared to, how much it would be to put it in a box with bubble wrap, make sure it's perfect so 6 decks don't get ruined, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, I think the people that buy those decks may not necessarily be as concerned for a condition, because a lot of those do migrate eventually because of their distribution channel to like Walgreens and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and at that scale too, even if it was 100 decks, the fact is they can also write those off to some extent as a business loss, and it makes it just a lot easier at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's just all those reasons, right? They can write it off, and they're so cheap. The money they're paying for those decks is like nothing for them.
Yeah.
At that scale, yeah.
Removing any human intervention, I think, is a huge way of making sure that happens.
Because I mean, even going back to talking about programming for P52, the second you bring a human in, even if it's just a customer support representative, your cost goes up exponentially. The least expensive person to work your job, minimum wage, answer a phone, answer an email, still is 5 times the price of a deck. So
yeah, that's true.
It's crazy. So
which is why we're doing all this stuff for Deckin Around.
Yeah.
Which is why we don't pay editors to do it.
Oh my god! If you can't tell.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the way to do it. Like proof of concept. I think there's too many people that throw money out in front of you and they don't like really get a handle of what the business is. And I think being hands-on is definitely the way to start things out.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it also. I'm a firm believer that the best way to know a direction you want to go with something like, for example, video editing is to have at least a basic understanding of it. If you come into it and you have no idea what the theories or concepts behind video editing to make something look good, even if you don't know how to do it, or you don't have, you have to have that core understanding at least a little bit, so that when you do find someone to be your video editor, you're not hiring someone who's as unskilled as you without realizing it. You have to be informed to some extent, and I think that hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Especially after we.
We'll do fine.
I mean, we also figured out how much it costs to hire a video editor, and ain't cheap. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
Or especially good ones. If you want to pay for good editors, they're going to be even more. But
those kind of things where. Once you start reaching the top of the top, like the exponential pay is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So just minimum viable model. Do what you got to do to survive. I mean, you guys are doing really well right now, I think.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate that.
And I think when you're in the trenches with it, though, too, you just have a lot more fun. There's Steve and I definitely live this emotional roller coaster that is Deckin Around. There are good days. There are bad days. There are days when we just don't talk because we need that like downtime. But like at the end of the day, we have a lot more fun than, you know, I think people who came into this really seeing it as a business model to throw money at to get something quick, because you don't have as much. You have, I don't want to say you don't have as much investment. You have a different kind of investment, and it's not as much of a emotional investment. You know, I think if you take that almost, for lack of a better term, that like venture capital approach to things, where you can say, okay, I'm going to throw $1,000 in these 5 ventures, and if 4 of the 5 fail, cool, I have the one that succeeded and I make a lot of money. Like, it's very detached. And I think, you know, for something like this, that's just not feasible.
Yeah, that's funny. Jackson, thank you, man. He's stupid.
I was talking about my channel. Thank you, Jackson.
He said, best damn playing card YouTube channel. And then he's like, I was talking about my channel.
We appreciate it, Jackson. So it's funny because I feel like for a playing card related show with a playing card designer / creative mind on our show today, we haven't had a lot of discussion about playing cards. And a question came in earlier. Not that that's a bad thing.
Which is awesome. Which is cool,
we love. I feel like the deeper into episodes we get, the less talk we have about playing cards or Magic or whatever. But a question did come in from Mark, and I always like to ask Mark's questions. Mark wanted to know, what is something that should not be in a card back? I feel like there's probably a couple good answers there, but something to you, I think, that really always has resonated with you that you don't want to like. Oh, and see, Mark's good about it because he was like, I got another one there. What are the do's and don'ts to put into a design?
Vague questions aside, vague answer and phrase. Don't put into a card back something that your audience wouldn't buy. It's that simple. Which sounds like it sounds facetious for me to say that, but it's literally like, well, what we were just talking about this. If we're rolling back into different segments of the niche market of like, well, cardistry, like that kind of fashion and those kind of bold statements, or even the audacity of like a knock for being so simple. We can scoff from our high horses in our own little realms, but that doesn't really carry over into that different field. And so what's no-go? I think the only thing that's really no-go is a swastika. I really, anything can go. I personally don't like skulls.
Oh my God, Steve, you found your soulmate.
Are you a Pisces, Alex? Are you a Pisces?
I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
But I like, it's just like, it's not for me. I like more nature stuff. Obviously, that's through seasons. I like designs that sort of, I don't know. It depends on who your market is, and I know that's a cop-out answer, but it's honestly the best one that tells the correct way to approach it. Because I think if we're rolling back to your questions, Mark, about what are the do's and don'ts of your design, it means that you don't know your audience yet, and so knowing your audience is the first.
Right.
So
I think you brought up swastika. I think what it comes down to is the don'ts are the things that could possibly cause issues, right? Like your swastika, racial things. Like, I mean, but there's a market for everybody, who knows? But, in our market, there's definitely things that aren't going to go over well. If you're going to go throw certain things, I'm not going to say anything, but if you're going to throw certain things on the back of a deck that is inappropriate or is, making people feel uncomfortable, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I think, is not only your market, whether it's cardistry, Magic, or collection. I think you'll hear about it as a community as a whole,
Yeah, and what you're describing, again, you're using this term community, and that's reflective of your audience, right?
Yeah.
So, yes. I mean, if you are in this really, I hate to say it, niche market of neo-Nazi card collectors, you're not going to hear any humbug about the swastika. It's only when your community interests reach over into another community interest that you begin to see that kind of friction. Yeah.
And I think, I think your answer was spot on though, market research. And I think it's something that we don't see a lot, or not even market research necessarily. I think that's step 2 to, like you said, defining your audience and identifying your audience. And it's something that we've talked about in the past with our Kickstarter stuff is you always see this tagline, like perfect deck of cards for cardists, magicians, and collectors. And you're like, all right, I immediately know that. And listen, there's campaigns that succeed beyond expectation using that tagline. There's some that fail miserably using that tagline. It's probably irrespective of the tagline. But to me, that immediately says, like, you're throwing very generic marketing approaches to this. And the reason you succeeded is more so because of the deck than anything you put into your campaign to actually sell your deck. Your deck sold itself. You did not do a good job selling the deck aside from that. And, like, it's funny because you're right. Even within those niches of magicians, cardists, and collectors, there is so much more specificity if you want to keep drilling down and finding that. But once you have identified it, talking to people within that community and getting feedback is probably the best thing you can do to figure out what your design should and shouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really interesting point, which is sometimes you're driving the car and you think you did something that got you there, and then you find out, oh, you don't have a car, you have a motorcycle or something like that. Like, so you're like you got to a place, but if you don't show up again and again, and I think this is one of the problems, if you you're not iterative enough and you don't share your art frequently enough, is that you don't get that feedback. So you do think like, oh, it's because I use this tagline of theater, cardistry, magician, collector. And the bad thing is that also helps shape the way that you do your other projects. And so I think there is value. I mean, that's like the whole theory of evolution is this iteration. The quicker iteration over time is how you best get market fit.
Yeah. No, without a doubt.
I mean, the funny thing is, though, is I think when you're designing a deck, you can have your idea of what you want to do. Obviously, it's your idea what kind of brings that emotion forward in creating whatever deck you want to create, whether it's something you went through, storyline, whatever. But what it comes down to is when you are putting it out there for feedback,
be open to it.
You have to be open to the feedback and not take it personal, because you're sharing it with your buyers, and if they're saying that looks like trash, obviously that's not the best thing to say, but like if they're saying that, there's something you need to change. If they're saying this or that or this or that, then, just be open to that feedback if you're asking about it. Do you know what I mean?
And be honest with yourself about who are you making the deck for? Are you making a deck for yourself, or are you making a deck for other people? And
exactly.
I think to pull something Jackson said from when he was on the show, if you want to make a deck of cards just to make a deck of cards, go print 1, go print 100, go print for yourself. Like, it's easy to go make a deck of cards, but if you're looking to sell a deck of cards, like ultimately you need to step outside of the ego aspect of it, that you're not making a deck of cards for yourself, you're making a deck of cards to share with the masses.
Yeah.
Whatever those masses may be.
Yeah, no, it's a hiding behind fear of failure, I think, is the biggest barrier for most people. Like, what is it? For the longest time, public fear of speaking was the number one fear. Like, for me, the number one fear would be like getting skinned alive, not public speaking. Like public speaking, yeah, it's scary, but it's just like, I think that's a really good example of how failure sort of drives our motivations. It's like there's a lot of neuroscience behind like actually feeling rejected. We feel real physical pain from just something emotional, because our brains can't really sort of signify the difference. And so, like, actually, if you take Tylenol before you get broken up with, you're better off. It's very interesting. I dabble in some neuroscience for fun.
That's cool. For fun.
I 100% don't believe you watch television in your downtime. Like I'm telling you.
I watch a lot of TV. It's actually it's a really bad habit.
Yeah.
But,
I mean that's kind of the basis for everything, right? Is it's all ego in us looking bad and failing or looking like we're failing. You know, it's like that's why we don't like public speaking. That's why we don't tell people that we're sad. That's why we don't tell people that whatever it is, you know, that we're fat, that we're overweight, that we feel this way, we feel that way, because we don't. It's all about not looking the way we want to portray ourselves to look, right?
yeah, it's a lot of the culture, especially in a culture as prolific and easily accessible to like America's. Like, hey, like, I'm feeling bad. I can easily get alcohol or fast food or porn. And those three things really hit up the dopamine. Like you're like, bah, 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 bah. And you're like, oh, I'm satiated. And like when you look at places like Bhutan, where they're arguably one of the happiest countries in the world, and there's some argument about how those statistics are. But basically, the whole idea is that when you have less of that kind of dilution of substitution of like, hey, you know, we're not shoving this kind of like placebo in your face, then you like sort of think about what actually matters. And I think that's why they're happier than Americans.
But yeah, I mean that's why all the countries are happier than America. That's like if we like I spent some time in Thailand, you know, working or volunteering at an orphanage. And
oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And the crazy thing, and one of the most amazing things was watching how the adults interact with the kids, right? And in America, if a kid falls down and like bruises themselves, I mean, you know, scrapes themselves or whatever, and they start to cry, the parent runs over or the adult runs over and they're like, oh my God, blah, 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 are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. And that makes the kid cry more and feel bad. You know, that's just, you know, how it works here. You know what I mean? But in Thailand, that kid needs to stand up and come to the adult and basically ask for help. Whereas they're teaching them at a young age, nobody's going to come over and pick you up off the ground if you fall down, like when you're 19, 20, 50, whatever age you are. You need to learn to like pick yourself up, you know, and you can give them a toy this big and they'll play with it for 10 days. And it's like a new toy for 10 days, you know, whereas Christmas Day, I've been through it. I'm sure all of us have been through it. When you get a present, you open it and then you throw it aside and you're ready for the next present, you know? So it's interesting because I think, you know, like you said, different countries understand the value of things differently than we do in America, right? Even with food.
Yeah. I think also if it was an orphanage, having them teach self-sufficiency because you don't have that kind of social structure to rely on, that's a huge one. Like I totally understand that. That definitely makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean it happens in just the families though. Like in Thailand, you know, I have friends obviously you know, when I was there that I met that I'm still friends with that, you know, just talking about that stuff, how different it is from how we are here. You know, it's just yeah, it's crazy to see that. And, you know, that's where the whole culture shock thing kind of comes in, right? It's just you go somewhere and you see things done so differently and you come back here and you're like, what is wrong with us? You know, it's like, I mean, it's so crazy.
It's not always bad, but yeah, I think
for sure.
A point of mixing cultures is a pretty quick way to expand your horizons. You don't necessarily have to travel, although that's the easiest way. There's this one. I hate to keep on bringing out studies. Jackson's gonna.
Let me guess. You found this study on Netflix, right?
Basically, it followed the highest grossing creative directors, and they tried to figure out like what was the variable. And the biggest thing, the most successful creative directors were people that either traveled abroad
and worked abroad more often than their peers, or was had a partner that was of a different culture. So like if you're in America and you're like, I'm Asian and my fiance is white, that doesn't mean anything because we're part of the same culture. But if she was Scandinavian, then that would change. And the whole principle behind that is essentially like if you're like, and this is only like how I would define creativity, is if you're pulling from different fields and then you're fusing ideas together. Because really when you disseminate anything, it's just like, oh, that's actually just like that from that. And so if you're defining creativity in that way, of course, if you're really living in that culture or you're either with a person or in that other culture, then you start to cross-pollinate and get to compare. And I think in comparing how we treat our kids, how we treat design, how we tell stories, or whatever that might be, that's really when we start to see things that when we bring it back home, people say, oh, that's creative. In reality, it's just like you're just expanding your perception of the world.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that just by going down south.
You reach the Bible Belt.
Like, oh God, let's drive down to Tennessee and say hi to Jackson. And yeah, there's some interesting pockets out there.
I'm
Alabama.
pretty excited to see this place, though. I'm not gonna lie. If COVID ever stops, I'll surprise him.
Chattanooga is literally one of my favorite places I've been to in the States, and I've been to pretty much every state, and I love Chattanooga.
Really?
Dude, Chattanooga's fun, man. I spent a lot of time climbing there, rock climbing.
Oh, are you a climber? Shit.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't climbed in a while, but
are you top rope or are you
bouldering?
Bouldering? Okay.
Yeah.
You got the build for it. I'm too scared.
Thanks. Yeah, but no, Chattanooga is it's awesome. It's super outdoorsy. There's a lot of hiking there. They got some amazing creeks that run through their forests out there, and obviously amazing boulders. But yeah, it's a fun spot out there. Chattanoogs.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's like weird pockets out there in Tennessee, in Alabama especially, that are just not, you wouldn't even think they're the States. It's so weird.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna bring politics into it, but
yeah, no, of course,
of course,
yeah,
it's pretty rural in certain areas, and it's just like my dad actually, he lives in an old oil factory town that like the factory's moved, and it's just like there's nothing there, and he's just like, yeah, I like it, I like the quiet. I'm like, I guess. Well, what does quiet mean relative to what? Like,
that's too funny.
Right. It's all about yeah, I mean, what we think is what, right? I mean, there's quiet everywhere, and quiet in California is a big difference, different than quiet in New Mexico or quiet in Alabama, or
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, taking and figuring out that kind of meaning is like of what drives all of our actions is something I've really been intrigued with. So I've actually been writing a book for quite a while about that, and it's just like I think they say like you write a book to sort of figure out your own shit, and that's basically what it is.
Nice.
And
so basically, I need to write a book. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's just like it's because it forces you to think critically about why you're thinking that.
Yeah.
And some people journal. For me, I try to journal. Yeah,
that changed my life. Yeah, no, it changed my life literally. Yeah.
But like, yeah,
it's kind of like talking, right?
Yeah. But you're activating a third person. View from that, and creating that separation allows you to think critically and sort of see. Well, like it's like when it's in my head, I'm doing a design. It's fine. It's dandy. It's always perfect. And then once you put it out there, then you can sort of see where the flaws are. Especially if you have breathing room, that time allows that sometimes, like, if you're seeing it back to back, day by day, you're just not going to be like, oh, well, actually, this was sort of like a garbage design because it sort of lacks on this access or something like that. But yeah, I don't know.
Now, do you have, I mean, I know me, you know, when you have a creative and you create something and then you look back at it, do you look back at anything that you created deck-wise and been like, oh God, like, why did I do that? Or why didn't I do this? Or
looking back now at all my decks, I think they were fine for what they were at the time.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to evaluate things based on what was available, what were the print techniques available, what you had at your thing.
Right.
I think judging the past based on what you know now is sort of unfair to some of the stuff. But things I would have liked to have improved. I think I just wish I could have done more decks, if I'm going to be honest. I think there are times, like I even as a sprinter, I can still sprint and rest, just not rest as long. And I think I was talking about this earlier, just like hiding behind this justification of like, well, you know, this isn't working. And it's just like, well, am I actually doing work, or am I just being masturbatory thinker of like, yeah, it's like whatever. I don't know.
I look at older images that I have on Facebook and I'm like, good God, that's terrible. Like it's
But
horrible.
I think, Alex, you mentioned it though earlier, like the whole idea behind growth is just being iterative and being able to iterate as you improve. You're always going to, if you do look back at stuff, you're always going to be like, oh, I could have done this differently. I could have, you know, I don't like this as much because you've grown since then. And like you said, yeah, you have new circumstances, whether external or internal, surrounding what you can do. I mean, it makes sense. Steve, you just hate on yourself. I don't know why.
No, it's just, you know what it is. It's just, I mean, obviously it's like you said, it's what was in at the time, you know, and now being just a better photographer, and that stuff is just out of date. It just makes me cringe, you know? And of course, when it was happening, you know, it was the cool thing to do, whether it was, you know, take pictures like at a railroad track, you know, like just like things that I look at now that I'm like, why did I ever do that?
Dude, all right. You're gonna make fun of me, Steve, but I'm gonna say it. I still like black and white photography with one single image that is in color. I love it. I feel like it's so cliche, and I just love it.
Steve, that's like Steve's pet peeve there.
That is like 99% of all photographers' pet peeve. Literally
so much. It's so much.
Yeah,
fun.
it's I try to find, you know, I try to. It's funny because Stu left, and Stu and I have this like joke, like ongoing kind of joke back and forth that he always jokes about it because he does selective coloring, and I always give him trash for it. But I mean it's just, there's some things in the law of anything, right? The law of design. You know, when you're kerning, you can't kern a certain like distance or, you know, pixels or whatever, you know, there's just laws in everything, right? And
yeah,
I understand the coolness factor of it. I understand, I like
the teachers
everything is black.
B+ instead of an A on my project.
Probably. You're lucky you got a B+. It's so fun. But you know what? In the world of social media, it doesn't matter because you don't have to be a good, and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying anybody, you don't have to be a good photographer for people to like your pictures. You don't have to be a good photographer to take good pictures. You know, there's people that aren't photographers by trade that could crush it in the photography world, you know, but they're cooks. Or they're, you know, they're just whatever. They're, I don't know. They make plastic bottles. Who knows? But like, I think there is room for all of that, just not in my toolbox. That's all.
Yeah, that's true.
But I appreciate you saying. I appreciate going back to our other story. I mean, our other conversation about allowing yourself to look bad. So I appreciate you saying that you like that. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. No, I think there are times where it makes sense. And it does. I understand the coolness factor of it, and yeah.
I have an idea for a coffee table book that I'll share with you later, Steve, that I feel like will make you cringe, and it's delightful.
Is it just all selective coloring stuff? We should do, me, Alex, and Stu should do a coffee table book all with selective coloring.
So it is selective coloring related, but it's one specific item. I'll explain it later. It's horrible.
Explain it later.
It's like a nightmare book.
It's funny because I wanted to do a coffee table book as a joke with all the bad things that people do, like selective coloring or like pictures, like a female on a motorcycle, or someone at a railroad track, or
you'd sell like 1 million copies and you'd be so mad. Like
it'd be my biggest work of art, and I'd make the most money off it. Yeah.
This is the discussion that Steve and I have all the time too, because anytime he brings it up about photography, and I'm just like, honestly though, man, like you look at it from a photographer's eye, but like from a layperson's point of view, like I think it looks great. And there's a lot more lay people than photographers out there who are gonna love it. And so you just gotta eat it. Like it happens.
It's funny because I've learned to take a step back and not care as much, because when you're with a client, there's certain things that I won't even do for a client, even if I'm getting paid, but when I'm with a client and I'm working with them and they want me to do a certain thing that I wouldn't normally do, like, here, take this picture with these stuffed animals. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would I do that? But they're the client and they want it. So we got to do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah. So I mean, it is what it is. But there's always those little things that we like, and there's things that I like that my designer friend, my the other half of Wounded Corner, Tyler, he's a graphic designer as well, and he'll do things. And in the law of graphic design, I'll be like, that looks dope. And he's like, we're not doing that. It looks like trash. But to me, I don't know anything about graphic design. So I might be like, that might look cool. It's kind of like the whole, it's just like we all like a certain thing. And like, again, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I totally understand the coolness factor of certain things. I even get the railroad, it's like, oh, this beautiful girl in a dress standing in a railroad track because it's the contrasting stories. I get it, but like,
I see a lot of wedding photography like that.
Yeah, that's like engagement photos that are like under a tree. Like, always under some big tree.
You're not okay with trees?
No, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying those are like the cliche like engagement photo like settings. It's like near like one of those old school farm fences with a tree next to it, and they're under the tree next to the fence, or they're on the railroad. Sometimes they're like kneeling on the railroad. That always throws me off. But
dude, that's like one thing. Let's talk about photography and cardistry. Okay, like one thing that really cringes me out, and I just don't understand, is when you have the cardists. Like, and they have the cards in their hand, but they're kneeling and they're like this on the ground, and the shot is them like on the ground, like kneeling. And I'm like, why are you kneeling? Like, you're not going to do cardistry like that. Like, nobody stands like that or sits like that to do cardistry. Like,
are they trying to fit in frame for the
no, they're literally kneeling down. It's just a cool pose in cardistry, I guess. And I look at it, I'm like, what is the point of that? It's kind of, I guess I'm the type of photographer I am. If it's not natural, then I'm not a fan of it for the most part. If it looks so weird and out of the ordinary of unnatural for me, I think it looks weird in an image, Yeah. That's why I could never be like a fashion photographer, because they get upside down in doorways and their feet, one foot's on this doorway and the other one's on this.
I mean, the avant-gardeness of it. Yeah, I mean, that's the point though, right? Like, so what we're describing, I think, like sort of brings up the point. If you like strip all that away, I once got made fun of because I didn't put mustard on my bratwurst. And he's just like, you don't understand. I swear this a little back. You don't understand, but mustard on your bratwurst makes it taste better. It has all this heritage, and like it's just how you're doing it. And then like if you want, you can add this coleslaw and this and then blah blah blah. And like really, what he's trying to tell me is that me enjoying this bratwurst alone, like I have to have this extra thing. And so what I'm trying to say is that you're essentially, when you build meaning like that, you're also, especially when we get into like these like niche levels of skill sets of like photography and all that, you are learning actually unhappiness. You are learning a set of filters that force you to be unhappy in which you otherwise would have been had you not known those filters.
Of course.
And so it's just like, sometimes you just like, you do have to let go and you're just like, okay, is this me just trying to separate myself from this and gain just like some weird superiority complex around my mustard on this bratwurst, or it's like,
I totally agree with you. And obviously we learn things through whatever we learn them from, whether it's my mentor or, you know, like certain things like that. And it's funny because I'm going to add to the whole Abercrombie clothing thing here and throw myself under the bus again today. And I'm going to say, so Leslie and I watched 90 Day Fiance. I don't know if anybody knows what that is.
I know what it is.
Okay. Okay. So here's the thing. So I watch it because as much as I cringe at all of the people on it, it's so great for entertainment, you know? And even as a photographer seeing these things that I wouldn't do, some of the stuff is so great for my entertainment. You know what I mean? It's like, it's, yeah. I mean,
what gets you excited about 90 Day Fiance that you can't get from any other show though, right? Like, is it because it's 90 days and not 120 days?
No, it's because they are such disasters on that show that it just cracks me up. Like I can't fathom people.
It's Schadenfreude.
Huh?
Schadenfreude. It's taking pleasure in watching the mishaps of others, right?
It's not even mishaps. It's like me just being fascinated with how different people are and what people would do where I wouldn't do it. You know, like it could be anything. You know, I don't think people who like prepare for Independence Day or are doomsday preppers, I don't think they're stupid. You know, I don't think anything like that. I wouldn't do it. So I would totally watch a show that's all about like doomsday prep. I think I have seen this show actually about doomsday preppers and people that have these shelters with everything. Like that stuff just fascinates me, not because I'm like taking pleasure in their pain, because they clearly don't have any pain. It's what they love. It's just, it fascinates me seeing how different other people are from myself. You know what I mean? Just like I'm sure people would watch a show of me being stupid and them being like, this guy's an idiot. He does a podcast for fucking 6 hours or 24 hours or 3 hours or whatever and talks about whatever random things. And then he goes and eats, I don't know, like, you know, like it's more so, I'm just so fascinated with so many different things that I just don't understand.
I mean, that's novelty. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's so funny.
Well, on that note, let's see if we have. Go for it. Go for it, Steve.
No, go ahead.
No. After you, please. After you.
I was just gonna say, when's the next season's deck dropping? We're not waiting till. I heard you say Christmas.
Yeah.
But you said Christmas next year. But when's
the sushi deck next year?
Yeah. So when's the next season's deck?
I might do an impromptu experimental deck for this Christmas, like literally next month. So this was going to be a Kickstarter. It's
All right, I'll tell you the name.
Okay.
It's called Unbroken. And ideally, it would reflect. I'm literally going to do this manually because I don't have anything set up right now. But it's a deck in which it's based around the concept kintsugi, and it's a Japanese practice of like so you take if you have your like a glass or a bowl and it breaks and shattered, and we live in this culture in America in which you just buy a replacement. But there's this kintsugi is that the art of taking those pieces, gluing them back together with gold or another type of highlight in which you're not hiding away behind the fractures. We're trying to make it look like it's invisible, but highlighting it. And so I think after 2020 is an idea that really got me excited. And so this deck, it's going to be super. If I'm launching it this year, it's going to be super experimental. But the idea would be that like I give you different sort of like each person that orders would get a different deck, and they get a chance to make the box together again. And each one is going to look different. And so basically the whole purpose of that is to force the idea of variation into cataloging, in that like this is Tyler's deck. This isn't Steve's deck. This isn't my deck. This isn't something that a brand scarfed down your face and said, accept this. This is what it is. It's your deck. And so I think it's not scalable right now because I have 0 things set up, and I just declared live right now I'm going to do it. But
now you're stuck.
Yeah, now you have to do
it. It's probably going to be like 100 or so decks. We'll just sort of test it out. But the idea would be that in theory, it would be based on your Portfolio 52 collection. So like one of the prefaces would be that you have to have a P52 account. And then I would look at your account, and then I would make an experience for you.
Oh, dude, that's dope.
No, that's really cool.
How long does that
I say that right now, like, don't. This is the experiment,
dude. Now you can have a lot of people holding you to it now, though.
It can absolutely possibly fail.
In preparation, if you're not a member of P52 right now, you should go to portfolio52.com and sign up for an account, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sign up for P52. That's something I should be advertising.
I've
been talking about bratwurst with mustard, and it's just like no. Yeah.
See, you already got the hype going. Oh dang, I am so in from Jay there.
And all I have to say is the fact that Jay is here in the chat says a lot about you, because
Jay never comes to our show. Yeah.
Jay doesn't always have the time to come on the show, nor does he probably care to come on the show.
Yeah, no, Jay's got the time. He just doesn't come.
Yeah, he just doesn't come. So the fact that he is here and he's been here for a while says a lot about you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I can reach certain people. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing that Jay and I have actually talked about is you have hands down the best mystery grab of all time. Like your last year mystery deck, was that on Black Friday?
No, it was Christmas. It was like a 12 days.
Christmas, okay. Yeah, hands down the best. It was the best value. It was awesome. So
well, I'm glad. I'm really glad. I didn't even think that was going to be a thing, and everyone was just like, I just like put something up because it's like I should have something, and it turned out really well. I will say I sort of regret unleashing.
Getting rid of everything.
Well, one that I gave away some decks that I really should have maybe saved for a few years down the road to sell. But and then 2 was the prototypes. That quite literally unleashed Pandora's box on things. Like
once that came out, you started seeing brands just doing colorways, not like recoloring one at a time. It's like they saw it, they saw proof of concept, and then they just abused it. Like, I'm not gonna point it out, but it's just like, okay, well, here's 10 colors, you can buy it or not. And I explicitly said that these are prototype decks. Like, I did it to test, and I picked the colors that I liked, and that's sort of what ended things. But I don't know. It's but I do appreciate the support that the sale got, and the support for Seasons, of course. And I just hope I live up to their standards with.
Oh, dude, you definitely do.
So.
You have a huge following, and obviously that shows in every time you have a release. And doing the whole prototype thing was great. And the wonderful thing about it is we all know that a lot of people nowadays in the industry say prototype, and they'll print like 500 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Not even a different. It's like an actual print run of 500. They'll call it prototype, and I'm not saying like a deck called prototype. It's actually, something that they're calling a prototype. Because I know Vin has a deck called prototype, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a deck that they're claiming to be a prototype, but there's like 500 of them. So it was definitely respectable. You threw in a ton of gems into those mystery grabs, and definitely by far the best mystery grab I've seen since I've been collecting.
Well, thank you so much.
Jackson says sample prototype artist proofs. So, and that's definitely the vibe for it. But I just want to say, Alex, we really appreciate you coming on today, man. We've had a great time chatting with you, and I think for anyone who's enjoyed this, by the time Alex comes on for the 24-hour episode, we will make sure he has a plug-in AC adapter as well. So,
yeah, battery's running a little low.
Oh, and it happens. Honestly, I'm shocked it's made it this long, to be very honest. I know we're on the third one, but it's done surprisingly better than I thought it would.
That's awesome that you have 3 batteries.
I put one in charger while I was waiting for the other one.
Nice.
There you go.
I didn't expect to keep on going. I'm not here to break Jackson's record or anything.
Jackson will break his own records. That's the unspoken rule there. We've kind of given him the golden key there to only break his own records for our own benefit as well, though. But no, again, we really do appreciate you coming on. Honestly, this has been an absolute blast. I think we talked about a lot of interesting topics, which again, in the comments, I will leave the link to the Behance page for Mood Garden. I will also leave a link to photo reading because that piqued my curiosity. So make sure to check both of those out. Anyone who has not signed up yet for Portfolio 52 should do so. We will link to that down below as well. And check out Seasons Playing Cards.
And if you like the prototype thingy and that sounded cool, we're doing a giveaway right now for Portfolio 52 with the buyer's guides.
Nice.
So maybe you'll like that. And then if I still have battery left, I'll give you guys a sneak peek. Don't use this as a thumbnail. This is only for people that made it all the way to the end of the Deckin Around show.
Nice.
Oh, sweet.
Let's hope the camera doesn't die.
Watch him turn the camera off before he can show.
Oh my gosh. And make sure for everyone who's still here too to stick around after this. We are going to be announcing who our next guest is. I love this. Oh my god.
Oh my god, it's so good.
This is literally so good.
Oh my god.
So in the pre-show, there was a discussion about the idea of the giant cat head, and I was imagining this very like anime cat head, and Alex shows up with this, and I lost it. It's so good. So good. It is so good.
The fact, like, literally, and that's why that's the only cat that I can deal with.
There you go.
Like, that one.
But
So
again,
good.
no, honestly though, Alex, thank you so much. Everyone who stuck it out, thank you so much for sticking around for the show. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, next week we will be going back to our normal Thursday schedule. This was a holiday special here, so thank you so much. We're going to take a quick word from our sponsor here and then stick around because we're going to be telling you who next week's guest is going to be.
Yeah.
Hummingbird feathers mimics the shimmer of a hummingbird in motion. Meticulously created with a specialized printing process using multiple holographic foils. Stunning tuck design and sculpted embossing with master letterpress creation. Featuring limited standard and gilded 3-deck sets. Pre-order yours today at marvelousdecks.com.
And so for next week's guest, everyone, for next week's guest, everyone, make sure to check this out next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. We're going to be having John Raker, the VP of Development for Theory 11, on the show. We are really excited to have John on. It's going to be a really fun show. We're going to be talking about hopefully some cards. We'll see, but it could be everything else in between. Who knows? So thank you, everyone, for checking out the show tonight. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. We really do appreciate the support and all of you coming out to check out the show. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving for anyone who's celebrating tomorrow, and be safe.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good one, and peace.